I do have, as usual, some weird ghost noise. I just tried unplugging USBs. It wasn't working. So yeah, with a little bit of new gear set up here, a little bit of new configuration, which we'll talk about over the course of the stream. Who knows? There's always something. I mean, it wouldn't be live hardware if there wasn't some random noise or bizarre something going on. So cheers, some coffee. Yeah, welcome. It's a holiday weekend here in the US, so maybe if you have nothing left to do, you wanted to hang out here. I wanted to go a little bit earlier so that for all the people that like to watch in Europe, that we could get online with you guys a little bit earlier, so you wouldn't have to tune out and split in the middle of the stream to go do something else, because like something like sleep. But anyway, so hey, wanted to jump on here and chat. I've been getting a ton of questions about really interesting stuff lately that I wanted to address in the live stream. So yeah, let me know real quick. Let me know in the chat of the stream if you can hear everything fine, if the levels are fine. There may be some high-pitched weird noise, which I was hearing before. And I think I might have gotten most of it out, but we'll see. Let me know. Curious before you start if the Digitone 2 is still in the lineup. I grabbed one as my only drum machine with Modular. I'm split on it. Sounds good. Awesome. Glad that it sounds good. So, Digitone 2. Yeah, it's so this kind of goes to the same question that I've been getting, and the reason why I wanted to do this whole live stream is you know, if you saw the thumbnail, which you probably did, if you clicked on this, it said how to play live. But that was kind of a little bit sarcastic, because for me, there's not one way to play live. It's different for every single person. Some people want, you know, more of a prepared something. Some people want to do it more improvised. Some people like the craziness of modular. Other people want to try to get everything all in one box. And I think that we have this weird fetish in the electronic hardware music synthesizer world that we're always looking for the magic solution. And I don't think that's unique to hardware synthesizer world. I think that that's kind of in the world in general. Everybody wants the magic pill, the magic solution to whatever the thing is. And I'm here to tell you that there is no magic solution. There are guidelines that are different for every single person. And those guidelines, for me, basically kind of start and end with, is it fun? And if it's fun, if you really enjoy it, then it's correct. That's like the only right answer. Like, are you having a good time doing this? Because ultimately, this is an artistic endeavor. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be a good time. So I think a lot of people are looking for that magic pill. And it's actually something we talk about in the courses that I teach, that you can't buy your way out of practice. You can't buy your way out of learning. People will say like, oh, if I just get that one piece of gear that this other super talented artist made sound good, then I'm gonna sound good. And the reality is that that's just not the case. You know, I could pick any endeavor and you could have the same gear as the best people in the world, and you're not gonna be able to do it as well as them, because it's different for you. And you need to find your own unique way to do things and your own unique kind of setup and what is fun and creative and inspirational for you. And that's what's the right answer. So kind of going into the question here about the Digitakt 2. Sorry, Digitakt or Tone? Digitone 2. So yes, it's an amazing machine. I love it. I don't love it any less than I loved it when it came out. But I like to change things up and move things around. And so just because something is not here on the desk right now, or that doesn't necessarily go with me when I travel live, doesn't mean that I don't like it anymore or that it's no longer good. It means that I'm trying some other things for inspiration. I've got some things that come and go. I have some things that stick with me because I haven't found any reason to change them. And then there's other things that are great, but there's other things that do that same thing, so they can be good as well. So if you look like right now here on the table, something that you will have not seen in one of these live streams or on my channel before is the push 3. And I have had this for more than a year. I got it right after it came out, and I love it. I use it. I use it in the studio. I'll set it up at different places in the room so that I can have access to recording and different inputs and different ways to control and ways to use samples. And so I use it all the time, but that doesn't mean that it makes its way into my live setup. And on the contrary, there are things in my live setup that I use exclusively for live performance that when it comes time to do other stuff, I don't necessarily use them anymore. So it really depends on you and what you really like and what's fun. I have a huge modular setup here, and I've talked about this before, of things that don't go in my live rig because they're not good for live performance. So for me, my needs playing live are pretty specific, and certain modules that I love and absolutely love the sounds they make. I love messing with them. I love the creative aspect of it, but they don't lend themselves to live performance. And so it's not because something is good that it's good in all situations. You know, like I like to equate it like to a car. If you need something to tow a trailer, you're not going to get a Ferrari. That doesn't mean that a Ferrari is not an amazing car. It just means that it's not good for towing a trailer. And the same, if you want something to go fast, you may not get a pickup truck. But that doesn't mean that that truck isn't good. It just means that it's not good for going fast. So it's the same thing with a lot of gear. Like all of the gear that's out there is good. Like there's not anything that, no company goes, you know, let's design this thing that's horrible, that nobody likes to use, that sounds bad and whatever. Everybody's making really good gear, but it's not all good for every scenario. So you have to find what's good for you in your particular scenario, for your particular needs. And for me, that is a constantly evolving, changing setup and situation, because not only because new gear comes out, but more often than not for me, it's because I'll try something that I haven't messed with in a while, or I'll purposely try to use something in a different way than I had used it before. And so that's why you've got a push 3 right here, is because I decided about a week ago that I really want to experiment with how I would use this in a live setup, because I have students that use push 3. I use it myself for other stuff. So I was like, how would I use it? And what would it be good for? What would it not be good for? So as an example, in this setup, what you'll notice if you've seen this setup recently is there is usually a sampler of some sort right here, whether it's the Digitakt 2 or the 1010 black box. And there's usually behind it the Electron analog heat plus effects as kind of my end of chain processing. And those are working with the modular for the modular and the Oxy as kind of like my live performance setup. Now, in this case, I have the push 3 here instead of the sampler, because obviously it's like the most powerful sampler out there. And instead of my end of chain, because I'm able to take my audio from the modular as well as audio from inside the sampler and put them through a master channel that I can then put basically kind of a pseudo mastering chain on, just like what I'm using the heat plus effects for, and just like what I would do in the box with Ableton if I was producing. So this takes the place of those two devices, and doesn't really save me anything, because price-wise, it's probably about the same as those two devices. Size-wise, it's big and heavy, just like those two devices if I was traveling with those together. So I didn't really gain anything. The idea is to try something different and see different types of workflows. And is this something that I like? Now, there's no doubt that the that the Push 3 is powerful. Like it is basically a laptop. I mean, it's basically a laptop running just Ableton inside it, which is amazing. And it's an audio interface and it has all sorts of control capabilities. And so hugely powerful. So it's not for lack of power, but it goes back to what I was saying before. Is it fun? Is it what I want to play? And so one thing I noticed as soon as I pulled out the Push 3, I started to notice that it was just as easy for me to go, okay, clip 1, kick drum. Let's see what we're doing here volume-wise. Make sure I'm not going to blast you guys out. Turn that down just a little. There we go. So let's go kick drum. Let's go sub. Let's put a bass line. Let's add in some sort of a texture here. Hi-hats. Then we can go to the main channel. We've got some effects here. Let's go to the auto filter. So cool. So now I can play, here's a track, here's, I could play this. Let's say we want to change up and, take out those hats and let's put in maybe a different bass line. And let's go to some sort of a hook here. Let's do like, so you can see I could play a whole live set just like this. And I could, let's do a different lead. Let's do a different bass line. Let's add a different texture. Let's add in a top loop. Then maybe we want to change it up. Let's do a different lead. So basically, you can do a whole live set just like that. So what I noticed was that, yeah, power's there, sound is there, quality, amazing. So if you're looking for doing something all in one place, all in one box, all in one machine, yeah, it's amazing. Like you can forget about all the rest of the gear. You can do everything just in this, just like you could in an MPC or in a Machina or anything else that's kind of an all-in-one, does-it-all machine. Cool. But one thing then when I started messing around with this is I was like, okay, what if I want to do something other than launch, mute, unmute, and adjust volume? And I wanted to start to do things that are more interesting. So if I want to do some sound design, okay, well then I'm going to go into a sound, then I have to go to a menu. I have to go to another menu. Then I'm using these same 8 knobs for different controls. Then if I want to do something performance effects wise, I have to go to a different page and use these same 8 knobs. And then I was like, okay, well, that's getting a bit menu divey. So then what would I do to not do that? Okay, let's add a MIDI controller. Okay, well then when you add a MIDI controller, all of a sudden you're back to MIDI control over software. So why wouldn't you just use a laptop with a MIDI controller at that point? So if you notice, all of this stuff totally ignores all of this stuff, right? And that's not necessarily saying one is better than the other, but it's saying if I have this, I don't necessarily need this. And for me, this is the fun part, right? This puts out the end output really well, and it sounds great, but it's missing all the fun bits. And it got me thinking about when I was at Superbooth, we were talking a lot about AI and music. And one of the things that came up in the conversation was if your focus is just the end product, right? And your music is a product, saying, okay, and I'm not saying it is, I'm saying if that's your thought process, if you're saying, okay, my music is a product, I want the end product to be as good as possible, forget about everything else, then why would you want to use anything other than a computer? Because it's going to have the most power, it's going to have the most options, it's going to be the least expensive. So you've got a whole bunch of pluses there. If the point of what you're doing is the fun, going back to what I was mentioning at the beginning, is the fun of playing music and making music and creating something fun, then this ends up being less fun than something like this, where with this you can create your own instrument. You're playing it, you're actually touching things, you don't have to go through any menus. You can reach for something and you know exactly what it's gonna do. And so there's this balance between what's fun to do, if that's your point, and what's gonna give you the most perfect end product, if that's your point. And I think that for a lot of people, making music, playing music, we've gotten to this weird place where everyone feels like they have to justify their existence. Like, oh, you have all that gear. Well, what have you produced lately? How many records have you put out? How many number ones have you had? So there's this justification that art now has to be a side hustle in order for it to be legitimate. And I push back on that. I think that, you know, I have plenty of people that take my courses that will never play live in front of a crowd because it's not their goal. They want to learn how to play their gear so they can enjoy the creative act of making something artistic. And whether that's for them at home, whether it's for their friends, whether it's, you know, whatever the reason, it's very much the same as if you have a guitar in your living room and you like to just sit down and play it every once in a while because it makes you feel good, and then you set it aside. You don't have to record an album and release a track and have a number one hit and whatever. You can actually derive a whole bunch of pleasure and fun from the act of making something artistic, whether that's painting or sculpture or crafting or whatever. In this case, it's making music. And so that's one reason why I wanted to talk about this setup in particular, is because here we've got something that is kind of like the direct contrast of all fun with a lot of imperfections and a lot of perfection with a lot less fun. And when you combine those two together, sure, you can do something, you know, you can create something interesting. Let's kind of stop all these clips down here. And if I was to get started here, I could say, okay, well, I'm going to bring in a kick from here because I like my kick here. And then I want to bring in a bass line from here. And maybe a sub from here. Give you a little more volume there. But then maybe I want to do a lead from over here. And now, let's say I wanted to do some hi-hats from over here. Maybe add a texture from here. Right? So you can combine those two things together. Yeah, that's cool too. That's a fun thing too. But at that point, it's a bit overkill. You've got all this gear here to do all these great things, and you've got all this gear here to do all these great things, but you can put them together in differing ways. So, okay, well then for me, I start to look at that and say, let's break this down into why we're using certain things that we're using. So here, I want to be able to have some things that are prepared. So like, let's say I want to have, again, I'm going to take these all off. Let's say I want to have a sub, okay? Because to do a quality sub bass in Modular can be a challenge, you know, as far as processing and getting it to sound exactly the way you want. So cool, maybe I want to have some subs processed here. Maybe I want to have some percussion loops that are different, right? So this would take a lot of different modules in here. So I could say, okay, those are some interesting things. Those are loops that maybe I want to have something there. Maybe a texture, like something like this. Or like So that can give me a lot of kind of cool stuff that's a little bit more challenging to do here in the modular. But then I can use the modular for all of those things that are really cool and really fun with modular. So like, and then you can start to combine them and make stuff that's really unique and interesting that way. So using this for what it's good for, using this for what it's good for. And then I start to look at it and say, well, this is kind of overkill. I'm using this for a few different loops, a few samples, and end of chain processing, of course, which is, you know, that you're getting a lot of power out of this as far as it being an audio interface, having a whole bunch of plugins that you can put on your master channel and have things be, you know, exactly the way you want them to, saturation, EQ, limiting, all that kind of stuff. It's interesting to have that there. So if that's your kind of key that's really important for you, then yeah, this is still doing some other really interesting stuff. But then I would say, okay, what's the trade-off? So for me, traveling, this is a huge piece of gear. It's an expensive piece of gear as well. So do I want to travel with that? Or would I rather take something like this, which if you take a look size-wise, right? The size of the 1010 black box compared to this is about the size of 6. This is about the size of 6 of these. And this can do exactly what I'm doing here. So I can put clips in here, have them time stretched like that, press a button, have them launch just like I'm pressing here to have them launch, and they can loop in the background. So cool, yeah. I mean, I could do, if that's what I need that for, this is something that's a lot smaller, a lot easier to carry, and less expensive than something like this. So if that's the priority, then there's another option out there, right? That's a pretty good one. And as I mentioned before, I often use the analog heat plus effects for end of chain, which is doing most everything that I'm doing end of chain here, with the exception of limiting. So it does, sorry, it does almost all of that good stuff. So because of that, there's a lot of other options. And so this week I was experimenting a lot. Obviously you can see that in this setup. I was also experimenting, you probably can't see it over there behind me, but I have the Digitakt 2 over there connected to the Ableton Move. Ableton Move just did an update this week. It's still in beta, but it's public beta, so you can download it if you want. And it allows the Move to now be clocked from other devices, which it couldn't be before. It could sync, but only if it was the master and other things were following it. So now you can actually clock it. So I can take USB out from the back of the Digitakt into the USB in of the Move, clock it from the Digitakt, and then have the audio from the Move go into the Digitakt with one set of outputs. And then I have a cool little mini live setup. The Move has a ton of the capabilities of what I'm using right here as far as really cool sound engines, the ability to play samples, although it can't time stretch, which is, you know, a drawback, but then you've got the black box that can do stuff like that. So again, there's not any one way to do this. I think that's the whole point that I want to get at in this first part of the stream, is that it comes down to what you enjoy, what you like to play, what you like the sound of, and that's the right answer. It's not because I use it and it sounds good that you should use it. It's not because I don't like it that you should say, oh yeah, it's horrible, I'm not going to use it. On the contrary, find your path. And I can show you the things that I like to use. That's what you see on this stream all the time, the things that I like to use. But when I look at the students that take my courses, it spans genres, it spans all different types of gear. There's not one way to do things. And the more I do that and the more students I teach, the more I realize that everybody's path is totally different. And it really should be guided by the idea of what's fun. What do you enjoy? What do you have fun playing? And if you have fun playing it, then that's the right answer. You win. That's correct, right? That's the correct answer to the puzzle. So, we'll take a little pause from walking through stuff here, and let's take a look in the chat. If you have any questions about any of this or comments on any of that, please feel free to put them in the chat, and I'm happy to address whatever. So let's see here. Hey, from Romania. Awesome. Hey, Ralph. Hey, Rolf. Sorry, Ralph. Rolf, how are you doing? Makes a lot of sense. I don't know what I was talking about, but I'm glad I made sense. Do you have the Ballista Blast in the case now? Can you demo every synth engine a bit? I don't have the Ballista in the case yet. It's not ready for release yet. Hopefully I'll have it soon. The Shockmount guys are finishing up everything. They wanted to get out the Griffin's Claws and then the Bishop's Mark II, which I have in my studio case over there because I'm testing it out a bit. They wanted to get those out first, and then the Ballista after that. So we'll see whenever it comes out. You guys will be the first to know. And yes, I will demo other synth engines for sure. Have you seen Dataline live stream with the push? It's so good. Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to sound amazing with the push because it's like having all of the power of a professional studio with synths and effects and plugins and audio processing and control and all different types of sequencers and all different ways to manipulate sound and modulate, having all of that in one box. Amazing. And I would say it's, for me personally, it's one of the machines that is the easiest to sound good with, right? You can download, like a lot of these samples that are on here, I downloaded from Audio Tent. I think they've got great stuff, so you check out their samples. And I wanted to kind of set up a sample of what I would use here. So I downloaded a bunch of samples, just loaded those in. Now, of course, you can make each individual one. Each one of these could be individual synths. You can play them live. You can, have MIDI that you create or you import. You can have stems from tracks. You can have all that stuff. So with the Push 3, again, it's probably the easiest to sound good on, right? So like if you want the ability to just kind of chuck a bunch of stuff in there and play it, it's gonna sound really, really good, really easily. Takes way less ability it takes a lot of ability to know it well and get deep and dive in and really use it to its potential, but it takes way less ability to just kind of get started and make it sound amazing because you can already put in, loops and samples that are already processed in a studio to sound amazing. Then you put them in here with the great converters, the great audio interface this has, and the ability to individually process every sound and the master. And all of a sudden you've got this thing that just like, it sounds amazing. So super easy to sound good on this machine, right? I can tell you. So again, this goes back to what I was mentioning before. If your objective is the end result, the output, I want my product to sound the best, go with this, totally, right? If you can afford it, this is a great machine and you will sound good. But if your purpose is to have a lot of fun in the process of sounding good, this is way less fun for me personally than something like this. This sounds a lot less perfect, but it's a lot more fun to play for me personally. So for me, that's a big balance, right? You've got the fun factor and then you also have the workflow factor. Workflow here is a lot of use a menu, use those 8 knobs, switch to another menu, use those 8 knobs, switch to another menu, use those 8 knobs, switch to another menu, use those 8 knobs. We're here with this, the workflow is I want to use this synth, then this synth, then this synth, then this synth, and I can move all around. I can play the mixer, right? Something as simple as fading up multiple things in multiple different ways is not possible here, right? Without the addition of an outside controller with faders. So then you start to build out this huge set of just control surfaces that are controlling something that's really powerful, where with something like this, they're all kind of included together. So again, not one is better than the other, but definitely very, very different experiences playing this from playing this, just to throw that out there. So let's see. when looking at the push, I just kind of think I might as well take my more powerful laptop. I'm with you. You know, I got to say, the push, I enjoy the push in the studio because I like to be able to have all the power of Ableton without having to use the mouse and click. This gives me hands-on control. I can play it like a keyboard. I can use the cool MPE functions. I've got a lot of synth engines. I've got kind of mixer interface. So I can just close my computer and use this in controller mode, or I can just take this on its own and have it be what it is here, which is, you know, a super, super powerful computer. Now, again, this is going to sound like a broken record, but if the purpose is the end product, use a computer, right? Because you're going to get way more mileage, way better sound, way higher quality, way more refined by using a computer. But if the purpose is not just solely a product, then you're probably going to want to look at some other stuff aside from, or in addition to, or along with a computer. And that's what this is. Don't get me wrong. This is a computer. This is a laptop with a small rectangular screen that only plays one software, but it is still a computer in a box. It's actually, I have my laptop right here next to it, and it is significantly larger and less powerful than my laptop that's right next to it. So, take that for whatever it's worth. So, where are we at now here? Things that draws me to your shows is the performance aspect. Me too. And that's, I mean, for me, the whole purpose, the whole reason why I like to play live is, again, it's all process based. I like the act of making music, which is why I perform improvised shows and not pre-prepared sets like what you would do with the push, is because for me, I want the show to be the audience and I, with our exchange of energy and vibe in the place, collaborating to write music live in the moment that we all get to live in that moment, right? So that's why I love the improvised live performance side. But I talk about that all the time, and that's why I wanted to do this with the push, is I wanted to give some more demonstration and some more input to alternatives and what the other things are, because that's right for me, right? That's the thing I like, that's the thing I enjoy, but that doesn't make it right for everybody. So that's why there's a broad spectrum of gear out there. It's all good, it's all amazing. So use the one that works best for you, that suits you the best, right? And try different things. You never know what you're gonna love. So let's see. Very healthy view of art. Thanks. What's up, James? Party people. What's going on? The synth therapy. That's funny. Hey, Christopher, FX Music. Seb, what's going on? Good to have you catch me live again. Just ordered the pizza after I heard it in my case. Yep, it's my go-to. I have to say, it's my go-to module for leads and basses. Super, super powerful for all of those things. Again, I'm going to turn those off. So if we do, so that's the pizza right now. Let's see how we do it volume-wise. Take all the effects off so you can just hear the voice by itself. And cool thing with the pizza is the pitch knob at the top can be easily configured to be an octave switch. So like, let's say we're using this right now, and we're using this as a bass now. But if we wanted to, it's really easy to switch. right? So lots of different options with one single module. So it's kind of my go-to. Although when I was playing one of the shows in Germany, I had some issues with the power cycle right before I played. And so it wiped all of my settings. So I couldn't use the internal envelope and I'd forgotten, sorry, I'd forgotten how to set up the internal envelope. So I couldn't do it quick enough. So I ended up not being able to use it for my whole set, which was not fun, only because I love it so much. But then I ended up going to, if I can switch the view here, I ended up going to the Percon's voice, which also, you know, just an absolutely amazing sounding voice. So let's see here. So obviously it's a drum voice originally, but you can go through different and that's with a bunch of effects. I can take those off as well. And that's just one of the algorithms, and there's like 13 different algorithms in this. So you can and then you can start to pitch it. So you can see tons of sonic variety with that. So when I was unable to use the pizza for that show, I just leaned a lot more on the Percon's voice for bass lines and leads. And it was able to kind of jump right in and do that thing. But that kind of improvisation is, for me, what makes the live sets so interesting, and what makes performing live improvised so interesting is that you never really know what's going to happen. So you have to be kind of ready for whatever, and then that will creatively take you in a different direction than you would have normally gone in. So it ended up working out really well. So anyway, let's go back to the chat. How does Percon's voice work for you? Oh, well, I think we just went through that. A firmware update to change the algo via CV would be useful. I think you can change the algo via CV if I'm not wrong. I can't remember. Cut off. Yeah, patch CV, I think, is the one for changing. Well, so you can save patches, which are individual algorithms with settings. And so you can then change through those patches using CV, but you can't just switch algorithm randomly with CV or switch algorithm alone by itself. But you can switch between patches, and that's already built into the hardware. But yeah, it's amazing. It's funny, I got the Percon's voice because I thought I was going to use it for all sorts of drums and percussion, but I never use it for drums and percussion. I find myself using it all for that kind of really cool, gritty, tonal, kind of impacts or bass lines or leads, or, you know, kind of industrial sounds, things that I'm not getting from any other module, comes really easily from the Percons voice. And interestingly enough, the parameter 2 in the Percons tends to be the kind of, depending on what algorithm you're in, it tends to be kind of the more percussive bit. So with that all the way down most of the time, it tends to be pretty melodic. But as soon as you turn it up, that's when you get that more. Right? So then it can really very easily become a drum voice. Right? But I'm not really using it that way because I've got some other great drum voices, and because it is so powerful for those really unique sounds that I can't get out of anything else. So honestly, I could see myself getting a second Percons voice and using one for drum percussive stuff and using the other one more for leads and sounds. It's an amazingly powerful voice. And I love that it's an all-in-one voice, which saves space in my travel case. But I love that it has all that playability built right into it, so you don't need a bunch of other modules to make it sound good. So another cool thing. Let's see here. Pizza approaching GOAT status in modular techno. Totally agree. Totally agree. If you're a guitarist or bassist who has become interested in synths, then the pushes, note layouts, and expressive pads might be perfect for live playing. Sure. So would any MPE controller. So if you wanted to do that, or, you know, if you're just looking for the layouts, so the isomorphic keyboards, so in like bass layout or guitar layout, you can do that on the Oxy One, you can do it on the Ableton Move. So again, you don't need to go to a $2,000 push 3. You can do it on, you know, the Ableton Move that's $450 and you can play that live, which is also really fun. So there are other options without going all in on something this big, but I totally see that value, and that's one of the things that's great here is the MPE capabilities. So if that's something you're into, it's a great MPE player as well, keyboard player. Let's see here. Hey Ed, what's going on? Good to have you. Let's see. I'm not one of those. I'm a terrible keys player. So am I. Let's see. Is it worth upgrading from push 2 to 3? It's a big upgrade. Yeah, it depends on how you're using it. So if you're using it in controller mode to control a computer, then the upgrade is much smaller because you wouldn't necessarily be using the audio interface. You wouldn't necessarily be using things. The big upgrade is the MPE buttons. Sorry. So to be able to use this player to play MPE and kind of slide between notes and stuff like that, that's a big upgrade. However, the rest of it, it all still kind of works the same to control Ableton. So slightly different layout, there's a few different functions, but for the most part, it's really the same as the push 2. So, you know, push 2s now you can get for like $300, like they're going super cheap since the push 3 came out. So if you're not talking about standalone and you're just talking about controller, the main upgrade is MPE. So if that's important to you, absolutely. If it's not important to you, get a push 2. It's going to be awesome. However, standalone mode, yes, it's a significant price upgrade, but it's a much bigger upgrade in capability than it is from the 1 to the 2, because then you're getting all the capabilities, being able to use this without a computer, having, you know, audio interface, having battery power, having, you know, a whole bunch more things that are great to get away from the computer. So, and then at the same time, you get the MP and all that as well. So lots of different reasons why you would go that way. Let's see. Here, Rosa just joined the party late. How do you use the Oxy One and push together? Which one is the clock? So actually in this setup, actually in pretty much all my setups, the Oxy is the clock. So I'm running everything from here, and I have the push set up in external sync mode. So it's being synced from this. So as soon as I hit play here, it starts this one as well. And I generally like to have the Oxy control everything. I like everything in one kind of central control surface. So that's why I use the Oxy one. I also use the Oxy one for everything that is sequencing. Although the push can sequence, it's one of my least favorite things about Ableton in general are the sequencers, because it just, you know, there's a couple of external ones that you can get. What's that one called? The Opal, I think, that acts kind of like an electron sequencer, but it's still, it's not what the Oxy is. You know, the Oxy is the big daddy of sequencers in my world. So even in my studio, I still control, when I'm using the computer to do stuff in the box, I still sequence everything from an Oxy one rather than trying to use the internal sequencers. Two reasons. One, capabilities. This does way more. And then the other one for me that's probably the most important is the interface. So being able to be like hands-on, touch it, see it, feel it, and being able to move things in a really intuitive way. Whereas, you know, with a computer, it's mouse click, point click, you know, click on a square, click on another square, click on another square. And so with this, I can do things really, really fast, and I can go in and change things really quick. Whereas there, it's like select, change a parameter, select another, change a parameter. So it goes really slow for me, and simple with this, similar with this as well. So the Oxy for me is everything that is sequencing, including anything that would be sequenced within the push, whether it was using a soft synth or whatever, I would still sequence from the Oxy. So let's see, where are we at here? With syncing MIDI CV, do you use something like iConnectivity or daisy chain in, out, through? It kind of depends on what I'm using. So in this case, I'm coming out, MIDI out from the Oxy one. I'm going into this little guy right here, the Oxy split. So it goes in here, and then I have two MIDI outs from the split. There's actually a third one that I'm not using right now. One is going into the back of the push to control that MIDI wise. The other one is going direct into the Oxy Choral so that I can control that via MIDI, because it has 8 voices. And if you're controlling it via CV, you can only control one voice at a time. But when you do it via MIDI, I can go here to a totally separate sequencer, have it set up as a multi-track that controls everything in the Oxy. So all 8 lanes are 8 different voices. So that's why those MIDIs go in there. So I'm using the Oxy split. Now, generally, I use the split because I'm coming out of the Oxy one, and the split gives you 3 different MIDI paths of 16 channels. This is the Oxy One Mark II, and if you get the split V2, it gives you actually 6 paths out. So you don't really need to chain anything. You can go to 6 different destinations, have them each controlled with their own thing from the Oxy, which is pretty cool. Now, if I'm using something more traditional, like the Digitakt or one of the Electron boxes or whatever, sometimes I will go through a MIDI through box where I'm going to split signals. But generally, I would just daisy chain stuff, because I don't usually have more than, I don't know, 3 or 4 pieces of gear at once. So there's no reason, there's no reason that would negatively impact the signal too much. Particularly because I'm not using, a bunch of vintage gear that's going to have really bad MIDI latency issues and stuff like that. Most of the modern stuff, it's really easy to sync it, even though you're daisy chaining, unless you get like, 4, 5, 6 things chained all at once. So it's never really an issue with that. So here I'm not doing that because I'm using the Oxy split, but in general, I don't worry too much about that either. So let's see. That mixer is so expensive. You mean this one, the Exalon? Yes and no. I mean, if you consider 6-channel all analog, all stereo mixer with multiple effect sends, and you start to look at something like on a broader scale, like a DJ mixer, you're going to spend, at least twice what this costs in order to get those same capabilities in like a DJ mixer. And then you have to haul around a DJ mixer. it's very similar in price to other things with similar capabilities. Like I have the WMD performance mixer over there, similar in price wise. The Mark II performance mixer is actually a bit more expensive, but does a bit more in the all-in-one because it doesn't have the connection modules like this one does. There are less expensive mixers, but they're also, in my experience, not nearly as functional and not nearly as usable and playable. So, you know, for the price of this, when you start to compare it for other stuff that does similar stuff, I don't find it crazy expensive. I mean, yes, it's expensive, but in relation to other stuff, I don't find it any more expensive. Actually, I find it less than a lot of other things that do what it does. So that's personal opinion, but yeah, whatever. Let's see. It's immaculate though. I agree. Hey Michael, what's going on? Do you use a multi-clock to sync the computer and the Oxy one to MIDI? I do not, only because I don't have one. I mean, if I had one of the ERM multi-clocks, I would probably use it. But generally what I've been doing when I'm kind of using a hybrid setup between hardware and software in the computer is I will clock everything from the Oxy still. So the Oxy will clock Ableton, and then the Oxy via MIDI will also clock the whole gear setup. So it all kind of syncs here. So the only real latency issue I have to deal with is a main latency between Ableton and everything else. So it's only really one thing that needs to be adjusted. So it keeps it a bit cleaner, I think. Sorry, doing it that way. But I don't use a multi-clock to answer your question. And here in my live setup, I have clock coming out of the Oxy going into the PAMs, and then it's clocking a few other things in here. And then via MIDI, I'm clocking the push. And generally when it's not the push, if it's the Digitakt or the black box or both, I'm clocking both of those via MIDI from the split as well. So let's see here. What about the Oxy Choral? Oh, I think we just went over the Choral, but I can chat about that later if you would like. What makes a rumble low-end sub-layer in your setup? So I've kind of tried to stay away from rumbles or move away from rumbles because they've just become so kind of cliche and techno that it's like, ooh, let's do the techno rumble. And I want my stuff to sound like its own stuff. So I have a couple of options. So one is for using so within my kick drum itself, I have the ability to kind of extend that out and get stuff there. But if I want something that sounds more like a sub, I generally will have subs as samples, as I mentioned before, because it's a real challenge to do inside a case. So I will use stuff like a sub from here, right? Or something like this. I don't know if you can hear that, depends on what you're listening on. Right, so then when you combine that with so you can get those to work kind of together, and then you can sidechain one to the other. So I generally use samples for subs, only because it's easier to do. It's really difficult to have a parallel processed multi-effects chain off of your kick drum. Now, I will say at Superbooth, I played around with what's the company? The drum module is called the Boom or the Boom or whatever. And they have a kick module that has a rumble module that attaches to it. And that's a multi-tap delay with some effects on it. And you can control and you can come up with some really cool kind of different types of rhythmic rumbles, which is pretty cool. Something I enjoyed a lot. So I would say if that's something you're looking at, look at that module if you're in the modular world, because it's really designed specifically for that. Now, it does take up a ton of space in your case. Their kick drum module is like 3 times the size of my kick module, and then the rumble one is another like 1.5 times the size of the kick module. So you end up with a pretty big chunk in order to get that. But if it's important for you, that would be something that would be worth doing. For me, I tend to like to fill up my low end more with subs or basses, or lengthen out the decay on my kick so that I'm actually using the kick to fill out the low end, rather than trying to get the kind of cliche rumble. Now, that said, if I did want to do that, one of the easiest ways to do that is to just use a sample of a kick with a rumble. So something like this. So if I was going to do something with a rumble, I would probably use something like this, right? Just because it's easy enough to do with a sample, and then you don't have to hassle with it. So yeah, a bunch of different ways to do it. Let's see here. Had a great jam today doing modulation mostly by my hands. Yes, I'm all about being the modulation. I don't know if you saw DivKid's thing that he did at Super Booth where he asked everybody, what's your patch tip? And my patch tip was be the modulation. Use your hands to modulate rather than pre-patching stuff and then like pressing a button and stepping back and watching your modular do stuff without you. Get in there, like turn knobs, like make stuff happen, be the modulation. So let's see, do you sequence the push with the Oxy 1? I was using a Torso T1 with my push and TR8S, but I decided it's too much and I was overcomplicating stuff. Yeah, I mean, again, right now, I'm not using the push for anything other than looped samples, so I'm not really sequencing anything in here, but if I was to sequence something in there with this setup, I would absolutely 100% use the Oxy. Way, 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 way better sequencer than anything that's in the push, or anything that's in Ableton in general. There's nothing that even comes close to what the Oxy can do. So I would say T1's a great sequencer, Oxy 1 is a great sequencer, HapX is a great sequencer. If you've got any of those, you're probably, or Circlon, if you've got any of those, you're probably better served sequencing Ableton with an outboard sequencer. But yeah, I mean, Ableton can sequence okay, but it can't do a lot of what the Oxy and the others can do. So yeah, definitely would sequence from the Oxy. Let's see, Percon's voice is super useful in live situations. The duality of presets and live sound designs is perfect. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Although I haven't saved any presets in it yet. Maybe I should do that at some point. Percon's voice or SYO point, I don't know what that is, but we'll see. It replaced Plonk in my live case. Fantastic on super low sub bass. Yeah, I agree. It's got a really cool kind of growl to it in that low end. The Percon's voice does, but I also have the Ericsson's bass line. Sorry. Ericsson's bass line next to it, which again, if you're gonna do something that's low end and you just want to do something kind of cool, here, just throw in something random here. All right, so I can do. But then it's got a sub oscillator and detune. So you can get a lot of really cool stuff. Out of the bass line. So another very cool module. It's got a cool amount of flexibility. Between those two, there's a lot of kind of low end growl that you can get out of your system. So I like them both. I would recommend either or both. Let's see. Hey all, first time I actually caught one of these live instead of catch up. Awesome. Good to have you. Welcome. Glad to have you live. Welcome to a Sunday afternoon in a basement in Colorado. Let's see here. I'm curious about your composition technique. How do you think mentally around setting up a song for performance? Like, what's your approach to a brand new song and make sure it's ready? Well, I think anybody who's seen many of these is probably laughing because My live performances are 100% improvised, which is why having the push is really different here. And I brought this in as an example today. But basically, I don't pre-prepare any songs. I don't have anything written. If you go into the song mode, the arranger mode, you see there's absolutely nothing saved. And it's the same if you go into any of my machines. So if you were to go into my Digitakt 2, there's no pattern saved. If you were to go into my analog rhythm, there's no pattern saved. If you go like any of my machines, there's no pattern saved, because everything that I perform when I'm performing live, I'm writing it live in the moment in front of the crowd. So my composition, a lot of there's two parts to it. A lot of it comes down to the sound palette that I've chosen, and that's basically the modules I've chosen to put in my case, and then any other sound sources. So if I'm using the Digitakt, I might have some sampled one shots or things like that are things that I know are sounds that I want to use at some point because I like them or because they fit well with like my sound that I like to have come out of the machines. But then every single other thing that I'm doing besides that is all happening live in the moment. So when I get up there, I'm getting up there with blank sequencers. I'm starting from scratch and I am writing it start to finish as if it was one long composition. And I like to approach it more like the idea of a soundtrack, of a movie soundtrack that may last for an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours, depending on how long I'm playing my show for, rather than song one followed by song two followed by song three. That's not how I want to play. And so that's not what I do. And the reason being, not to get too in depth into this, but I've talked about this a bit on these streams before, is that I come from about 30 years of DJing. And so if I want to play tracks, I'm just going to DJ because it's way easier. I just roll up with headphones and a USB stick and I can play all sorts of tracks. I can go from one to the other. I can have a lot of fun. The crowd will have a lot of fun. For me, the fun of playing live is sharing that moment of creativity, of songwriting live in front of the crowd, rather than playing back something that I prepared in advance, because that's what I did for years. I would produce in advance, I would write songs, they would come out, I would have a WAV file, I would load it on a USB stick, and then I would go play that live. I would DJ it, right? So I wanted to move as far away from that as I could and really have the show be the creative process and not be the end product output. So my show is not a collection of individual songs that I prepared in advance, but it is a written live in the moment, for the moment, truly live experience. So anyway, that's my answer to that. So, which is very different from producing for me, by the way. So if for anybody who's looked into the courses that I teach, which are actually on sale right now, if you're interested, go to circlelive.com/courses. The two main courses that I teach, one is an improvised live performance. So it's kind of how I do that, how I set things up, and the kind of theory and the thought process that goes into performing live improvised on hardware. And then the other one is a hybrid production course, which is how I produce tracks using live performance gear and using, incorporating elements of spontaneity and live performance into production, and then taking some of those things that are the result of the production and incorporating those into samplers in my improvised live performance. So there's this kind of cycle that goes back and forth between playing and performing, back and forth between those two. So so that's the two courses, kind of are those two different facets. One is the production side, one is the performance side. And I don't bring any of the productions into the performance as far as like bringing in stems or prepared tracks or anything like that. Okay. So let's see here. Hey, Jason, what's going on? Good to see you as well. Do you think the Oxy 1, works well if I just want to use it to control electron boxes? Totally. I pretty much exclusively sequence my electron boxes with the Oxy. Anything that's melodic, I sequence from the Oxy. If I want to parameter lock things, which I do a lot more with percussion than I do with melodic stuff, then I would sequence those internally in the electrons. But yeah, anything that's melodic, I would still totally sequence from the Oxy 1. Cool. How do you manage levels from all the modules? My rack is half the size and trying to balance that many outputs on the fly is a challenge. Funny you asked that, because that goes back to something I answered a little while ago, why I have a mixer like this that does what it does. For me, playing live, the two most important tools in any live setup is whatever you're using to control stuff. So like in this case, it's a sequencer. It might be a keyboard if you're a keyboardist, whatever, but whatever you're using to control things is one. And the other one is your mixer. Those are your two most important instruments that you're actually physically interacting with, probably more than anything else. Your sound sources, you're going to modify, you're going to modulate, you're going to manipulate them, you're going to change things up in your sound design, for sure. But the real key is mixing and control. And so that's why these two things, the mixer and the control surface, in this case it's the Oxy One, are the two most important aspects in this. So how do I control levels? It's different for every module because a lot of modules have different output levels. So like, for example, my kick drum, the battering ram, is a really hot output signal. So I have it going through an attenuator before it goes into the mixer, because if I don't attenuate the signal, I clip right away with that because it's such a hot signal coming in. So I bring that down. Same with the Erica Synths bassline and the Erica Synths Percons voice. Those three are extremely hot. So I have those all going through attenuation before they get into the mixer. And then I can use the mixer. I kind of set levels using the gain on the mixer so that I can say, okay, these are the opposite of gain. I need to attenuate those before they come in. And then other things I'll set using the gain so that basically all the way up is kind of a good balanced mix, and then I can control from there. So I know that no matter where I am from bottom to top in the fader, I'm never going to overdrive and clip the system because I've got it set up so that those are all at the right levels. Having that kind of control, having a gain per channel is really important because of that. Being able to have attenuation if it needs it before it goes into your mixing, that's another important thing. But I tend to, in an effort to try to simplify things so that when I play live, it's not too complicated for me to use and mess around with. I make it so that when they're all the way up, they're mixed correctly. Then it just becomes volume level set, like where do I want that artistically, volume wise within the thing. And it's not using the mixer to, correct or avoid things like clipping and overdriving systems and things like that. So that's why a mixer is so important. And for me, again, the reason why I use the Exalon and the WMD Mark II performance mixer is similar. Long throw faders is really important to be able to have some control. So there's a lot of smaller mixers that can do some of this stuff, but they don't have the length of fader, so you lose a lot of that control. So it's a much bigger jump for a smaller movement. And then you've also got much smaller knobs. Again, smaller throw means it's harder to really refine the signal, whether it's a gain, whether it's an effect send or whatever. You want to be able to have knobs that are big enough and faders that are long enough so that in the heat of the moment, you're not losing that control over the individual signals. So that's where mixers become really important, just like control surfaces. So that's how I control levels more than anything else. But there is a lot of setup to levels at the beginning because every module's output is a bit different. So some need attenuation and some need gain. And again, gain works here in the mixer, and attenuation I put before it gets to the mixer for things that are extremely hot on the way in. So yes. Let's see here. Where are we at? There's an excellent video with EasyBot and I for rumble drums. Yes, that was where I was talking a bit, I think, about sequencing rumbles, which is another option as well. When I use the Digitakt 2, I generally have one track that is straight 16th notes of a kick drum sample that's filtered way down. And so that acts as, it would be a, 16th note rumble. And then I put the kick output into an input in the Digitakt, and I use that to sidechain that track. So no matter which kick pattern I have, I'm gonna duck one of those 16th notes. So if I'm doing a 4 on the floor, it's easy to sequence that. But what if you switch to a breakbeat and you still want it to have a rumble and you want it to match your kick, but you're not using an effects chain? It's a great kind of cheat for that, is to have straight 16ths and then just dramatically duck whichever step your kick is on. So that way you're taking that one out instead of sequencing it out. So I do that on the Digitakt a lot when I'm using that as well. So let's see here. For a hybrid setup, I've always had the computer as master clock, but it sounds like the Oxy one's worth considering. Yeah, I mean, it's really a personal preference thing. I just like having one start stop where I can push it here and I don't have to like go into the computer to start my show and then hope that it goes through here correctly out to here. I like to have everything here. So that way if something goes wrong with the computer, I'm still sequencing everything. I still have everything still driving from one place. And for me, I just get a certain comfort level from hardware. So I like to do it that way. Let's see there. Audio Tent. Hey, what's going on? Really enjoyed your performance at Superbooth. What's typical use of the Noisite Warp in your current setup? Audio Tent, if you guys, you may have missed this already in the thing, but I was just pushing every single thing that I have in the push right now is a loop from Audio Tent. Those guys make outstanding sample packs. And so anything that you see in here right now for this kind of sample live setup, which again, if I just push play, I could do kick drum with a sub, with a bass line, with percussion and a texture and some hats. And every single thing that you're hearing right now is a loop from Audio Tent. So shout out to those guys for making such kick-ass samples. They're pretty damn awesome. Anyway, what's my typical use of the Warp? So the Warp is interesting. I got it fairly recently, and every time I have free time, I'm working on going deeper and deeper into it. So it is an incredibly deep synth for being able to create not only wavetables, but using, oh my God, it's using harmonics to create wavetables live. Then you can save those wavetables and you can morph between them, and then you can set up all of the different knobs in here to control different elements of that. So for me, I'm using it with the couple of presets that I've saved, but it's kind of capable of every sound. So it could be anything that you want it to be, and it can save presets, and you can also save galaxies, which is this thing up here, which is basically 512 individual wavetables that you can morph between, which is pretty awesome. So it's by far the deepest thing I have in my case. And so every chance I get, I'm trying to dig deeper and deeper into it to create new and interesting stuff. But what's interesting with the Warp and also their new controller, the Drop, is that they're both designed by this guy named Tomas, who is a really, really good live artist. And so he's designing them from the perspective of playing them live. So you get all this like super deep setup, kind of like with an Octatrack, like setting it up is deep and hard and menu divey, whatever. And then once you set it up, very much like the Octatrack, it's really easy and intuitive to play live once you set the knobs and buttons to work the way you want. So for me, I have this set up to do a few specific things, and I'm only scratching the surface of it because I've only just recently got it. So it will do more and more and more in my setup over time. But for right now, it's just using some pretty basic kind of deep drone sounds, some bigger kind of impacts, like those kind of I always call it like the Hans Zimmer Batman horn sound, like that big bwomp sound that you get in Batman. It's great for that. So I'm using it for all sorts of kind of impacts and really cool dramatic sounds because of how intricate and interesting the sounds are. But it will do much more, and I just haven't even been able to get enough into it yet. So I look way forward to spending more time with that. So let's see what else. I only perform live. Cool. That's wild. I knew you performed, didn't realize it was everything on the spot. Yes, everything is perform live, and that's something that's intentional. So again, like I said, I DJ'd for like 30 years, and I was to the point where I wanted to move as far away from DJing as I could while still having the performance and that live aspect, because I felt like DJ sets were just sounding more and more and more alike as people have the access to exactly the same music, same live sets, same gear. You know, the technique is kind of less important than it ever was. So it all kind of sounded the same. And I wanted to share that creative process in a live aspect. So I set out to create live shows from the beginning with the idea that I wanted the live show to be live production on stage in front of a crowd, producing music live, not regurgitating things that I had produced previously, because again, I had 30 years of that. And with way less hassle, I didn't have to haul around suitcases full of gear in order to play things that I produced in the studio. I could just bring a USB stick, pop it in, and play things that I produced in the studio. And the only difference was I was, controlling the whole track from one play pause button rather than having a whole bunch of things that were playing and pausing at the same time. But other than that, it was all kind of similar. So that's why I moved this way. And no knock on people that are doing it the other way, because it's not, to each his own. Like I said at the beginning, this has to be fun. And for me, the fun is the thrill and the exciting creative process of making music in the moment. And that's what I wanted to share with people, not just the music itself, which was what I did for years. I shared music, but I didn't share the process of making the music with broader audiences. And that's what I really wanted to do. So that's how I set up this in this way. So let's see here. Avoiding affiliate bias, what would be your next hardware purchase? Well, I will let you know, without going too deep into this, as far as affiliate bias. I don't do any sponsorships on this channel. I get given gear all the time. I'll totally disclose that. I get given gear, but most of what you see here is gear that I bought myself. And the gear that I do get given, the only way you will ever see it in my live set or on one of these videos is if it's something that I actually use and actually really like to use. So there is way more gear that people send me that you never see on this, and I just send it back after I've used it a little bit and say, that's cool and all, but it doesn't fit. It's not for me. It's not my kind of thing. So I've gotten a lot of gear over the time that I just send back and you'll never see it. So anything that you're seeing here is not because of some sponsorship. I don't ever get paid by these companies ever. But sometimes I do get given things. And in those cases, I will only use that here if it's something that I like. And more often than not, they're not approaching me to say, here's a piece of gear, say something nice about it. It's me saying, hey, I want to do this. I'm going to reach out to them and say, hey, I'm really interested in your thing. If you send it to me and I like it, I'll use it. If I don't like it, I'll send it back. And so that happens fairly often. But the vast majority of the gear that you will ever see on this channel is stuff that I've bought on my own. And so it's not, so as far as sponsorship bias, there's not a lot of that. There's a great video that Midlife Synthesis did where he talks about if you buy stuff yourself, you're more likely to be biased on it than if somebody gives it to you for free, because you have this kind of confirmation bias where you're trying to convince yourself that you spent your money on something good, which I totally agree with. And maybe that's why you're seeing the push here, because I bought this and I found that I wasn't using it as much as I wanted to, and I wanted to find ways that I could use it, find ways that I could like it. So I brought it into this setup and I realized that I'm not using it that much because it's not what I want to use. And I brought it here to show this and show how I'm using it and ways that you can use it if that's what you're looking to do. But because it's not what I'm looking to do, this is probably the first and last time you'll see this in a live setup. It'll still be in my studio for studio production stuff. But as far as in a live setup, I'll probably end up going back to the black box and the analog heat. So now, to go back to that question, now that I've beaten the affiliate bias thing to death, What would be my next hardware purchase? I think that, yeah, if I was going to buy something right now, I think that I would hold off and I would buy the Noisite Drop when it comes out. It was the coolest thing I saw at Superbooth, and it was pretty amazing as far as an actual functional piece of gear that I think I would use in a live setup. There are a couple of modules that I'm looking forward to when they come out. The Shakmat Ballista, the Ballista Blast, I think it's called, sounds great. Again, I played it at Superbooth, got to play one of the prototypes, and it sounded amazing. What else? I don't know. There's not a lot out there that for me right now is like, oh yeah, like that's the thing I gotta have. I really want that one. There's some cool stuff out there. I will say, I have some gear that I'm selling right now, and I have a guy that approached me the other day that he may want to trade something that I have for a Teenage Engineering OPXY, which is something that I've been really wanting to try. But haven't wanted to spend the money on because it's really expensive. But this guy may want to trade me something for it, which would be great. Then I get a chance to use it, see if I like it. If I don't, I'll sell it. But that was one that I definitely wanted to try out a little bit. What else? I don't know. Like the only thing that I feel like is really missing that I wish that somebody would do, and hopefully somebody will soon, is a standalone mixer. That's not a Eurorack mixer and that's not a DJ mixer, but that is a performance mixer for live artists that use it as a performance tool, and that it's set up to be a performative tool, like the Exalon is in my case. If I had something like that outside the case that I could use with other pieces of gear, that would be pretty cool. But there's nothing like that out there yet. So let's hope that something like that comes out soon. But yeah, I think that's it. I mean, like there's not anything out there that's really like, I have to have it. But yeah, I guess if you think of something, put it in the comments, because I don't know if I'm missing something that maybe I would like, but that I haven't thought of. So anyway, it's a good place to be at where you don't have this crazy gas that like, I've got to buy this, I've got to buy this, I've got to buy this. I'm pretty happy with what I have. And the only thing that I would bring in is pieces of gear that would do something better than what I already have doing that thing. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm not sure. Let's see. In your experience, Blackbox or Bitbox is able to record perfect live loops without shifting? I don't loop live with either of them, although I have done some of that in studio with the Blackbox and it works great. Bitbox and Blackbox are the exact same software. Like you can take the SD card out of the Blackbox and put it into the Bitbox and it works the same. You can modify things and then take it out and put it in the Blackbox and it works the same. So the only difference is basically the way you control. There's a lot of things that are, the Blackbox has buttons on it for certain things. So like if you see here, like there's, you know, all these function buttons that take you to different menus and then record, stop, and play down here, which you don't have on the Bitbox. You've got CV control over those things, plus different outputs. The outputs that are on the back here are also on the front of the Bitbox. So they're basically the same thing. So I wouldn't expect, and maybe if there's somebody that's had experience with this, pop into the chat and say something, but I wouldn't expect that they would be that different, if at all, because it's the exact same software. And more or less the same hardware. It's other than the interface of buttons versus CV. But yeah, as far as looping, I think they would do the exact same. Let's see here. Have you tried the internal level control on the battering ram? I have. And I can't get the same dynamics with velocity if I turn down the level. So it's not giving me the same range of velocity. So I would rather do it this way and then attenuate rather than bringing down the top end of the battering ram and then putting it through. But that is an option if that's good for you. Let's see. Good evening. Wait, what? PEMS has a black panel? Not from them, but this is from, I think this is Mork. No, this is from a different company. I can't remember. A lot of the black panels that I have are from Mork modules. So the battering ram and Archer's rig, those are both from them. What else? Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, and the PEMS was from another company, a company in Sweden, I think. I don't remember. But anyway, there's a bunch of companies out there that do black panels that are aftermarket panels for some of these modules. And as you can see, I like the black look. But yeah, I just put those on myself afterwards. So let's see here. Everything on the spot, improvise. This is the way. Absolutely, this is the way. Always great insights for this type of equipment. I hope to drift from the pattern-based electron workflow to this, but it seems a mountain of money and time. What would you recommend as a starting point? Are you talking about a starting point to get into modular, or a starting point into shifting away from pattern-based into more improvised performance? Because if you, the improvised performance is not gear specific. So again, if you're into learning improvised performance, sign up for my course. It's 40% off right now, circlelive.com/courses. The next session starts in a week, in I think the 2nd of June, and it goes on for a month. There's a lot of individual feedback and there's a bunch of videos and stuff. But the whole point of that is that non-gear specific, the whole thing is about how to do improvised live performance, how to set up a rig using whichever gear you want to use in a way that allows you to improvise on it. So you're creating a setup, you're creating an instrument or a network of instruments that allow you and that encourage you to improvise live. So if that's the case, you don't need to move away from the electron boxes. I have plenty of people that do improvised live performance exclusively on electron boxes. As well as, you know, in the last session, I had a guy that was just using push 3 and a MIDI controller. So you can do it any way you want. You can go full modular. You can go a whole bunch of different hardware boxes. You can do combinations. You can use a laptop. I had one guy in one of my courses that was using an iPad with a Digitakt, and that was his whole live setup. Cool. You can use any type of setup you want. The course is more about how to set that up in a way that allows you to improvise on it, because you can do this on pretty much any gear. Some lends itself more to it than others, but it's non-gear specific. So if you're asking about how to get into modular, that's a whole other thing. Put that in the comments and we'll go down that road if that's what you're asking about. So let's see here. Anyone had a problem with the black box audio in sockets? I have not, but see if anybody else does. The drop looks fantastic. It does. It was my favorite thing I saw at Superbooth, and there was a lot of cool stuff at Superbooth. Let's see. Still possess or have a use case for the Syntakt. I actually sold my Syntakt because I just found I wasn't using it very much and I wanted somebody else to use it more. Not that it wasn't good. I don't like to see stuff collecting dust. So if I'm not using it all the time, I tend to want to sell it. But the Syntakt is great. If you're into a synth-based workflow and you want a whole bunch of different sounds in one box, it's amazing. I sold it when I got the Digitone 2 because again, a whole bunch of sounds in one box, synth-based workflow, all that stuff. So it depends on what you need. But yeah, it's amazing. Surely the Flow 8 does that. I'm not sure what you mean. So does what? What about the Jelly Mix IntelliGel? As far as a performance mixer, I think it's not a performance mixer. It is a mixer, very much like the Zoom L6 or kind of any desktop thing that serves the remedial function of mixing audio signals together at level. But as I mentioned before with this, just the fact that it has no faders for me makes it way less performative because it's much more difficult. You can't, like if I look at this, I know what these levels are. Where if I've got those all on knobs and I'm trying to find in a dark club where the individual lines are set and kind of look into it and see, I'll never be able to see that. So having this type of feedback, having the ability to be able to move multiple levels at one time rather than twisting knobs. You've only got two hands, so you can only twist two knobs at once. So just those things alone make that not a performance mixer. It's a mixer for sure, and it looks fine and it sounds fine. I messed around with it at Super Booth. It was fine, but for me, it's not a performance mixer. So it's there's a difference between a mixer and a performance mixer, and that one is definitely a mixer on that side of it, just like the L6, just like others. Non-performative, non-functional as a performance mixer. So let's see here. Create audio assemblers, an interesting standalone mixer. Sure. I haven't messed with it much, but it's okay. External modular mixers. I've been toying with the idea of the Exalon setup in a nifty case. Yeah, that's an idea to do. Although again, that's going to get really expensive really quick to do, because you're going to have a separate case, separate power supply, plus all the Exalon stuff. What I would like to see is a standalone thing that is a hardware mixer that doesn't have to be modular-ish. Because like, for example, the Exalon has all these modular inputs for being able to CV control volume and panning, and CV control your effect sends and all that stuff, which if you're using it as a standalone, not with modular, you wouldn't need all that stuff, right? So you would need this stuff and not necessarily those. So I don't know. I'm looking for something pretty specific, which I have not seen yet. Let's see where we at. L6 is nice for your, yeah. I mean, I would say that, like I mentioned before, the Zoom L6 and the Jelly Mix, the IntelliGel one, are kind of the same. You know, they're one smaller, but they're the thing with the so the L6, for example. Another reason why it's not a performance mixer is the knobs change what they are based on what function you have. So it's not something that you're just going to reach for and use in a performative way. It's going to be put it in there, set your levels, and then don't ever touch it during your set. So again, the difference between a functional mixer and a performance mixer is pretty dramatic. And the L6, the Jelly Mix, things like that are mixers, but not, in my mind, performance mixers. Performance mixers are more like this, the WMD performance mixer, DJ mixers, like the zones, like the 92, the 96, like the Pioneer V10. Those are performance mixers. Those are designed to perform on as an instrument rather than just to functionally mix audio signals in a non-performative way. So let's see, Torso T1, question mark. I'm not sure what that means. Do you ever think about an ER 101? I did not, actually. I'm not sure. I have not messed around with that at all. Want to combine my voices with my Digitakt. Cool. Dusty Clouds, the panel company. Oh, is that what this one is? Yes, exactly. DC. Yes, you got it. Maybe get an analog rhythm. Best drum machine ever, in my opinion. Hey Keith, what's going on? Welcome. Most intimidating thing is figuring out how to move from track to track seamlessly. I get stuck there. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about improvising live, and particularly in a modular way, is that you don't have to contrive a way to get from a point A to a point B, which again, you've created a lot of difficulties if you've pre-prepared track A and you've pre-prepared track B, and then you don't have gear that's designed to get you from one pre-prepared track to another pre-prepared track. Now, what do I mean with that? What I mean is, if you take, for example, DJing, you're going from one pre-prepared track to another one. You're going to use a DJ mixer, which will have a 3 or a 4 band EQ that will allow you to EQ different bands to be able to smoothly mix from one track to another track. In modular, we don't generally, or even in hardware, we generally don't have multi-band EQs per track that allow you to do that, which is one reason why you see a lot of pre-prepared set live performers using DJ mixers, because what they're doing is they're basically DJing from one set of machines to another set of machines and using that same DJ technique to mix from one to the other. In live setups, we don't have that same capability. So when you've created this arbitrary point A and arbitrary point B, coming up with a natural sounding way to get between them can be really awkward. And that's why most people have trouble with transitions, because the gear is not set up to do it, right? And so what you can do is you can transition individual instruments that you can't do with a pre-prepared live set if you are doing it in an improvised way. So I can go from, if I'm playing, stop all my clips here. Yeah. So if I'm playing this particular kick drum, I'm going to get us some more volume here. So let's say I've got this kick drum playing, but I want to go to a different type of kick drum. I can modify the sound of this kick drum and have it become another one. I don't have to get from kick drum A to kick drum B. Now you can do that if you're improvising, but if you have to have something pre-prepared, how do you switch between, in a natural sounding way, preset A to preset B to go from song to song? So you see what I mean? You're creating a lot of problems that you're then struggling to fix in a live performance by writing songs and then trying to make them happen in a natural sounding way live. One of the better ways I've seen to do that is if you look at some of the older videos of Dave Mack on his channel, he was playing with an Allen and Heath, I think DB4 mixer. On one side he had a Digitakt and a Digitone, and on the other side he had a Digitakt and a Digitone. And this would play a song, and this would play a song, and then he would DJ between them. And he would switch them around, and he could have effects, and he could mute things and take them out, play that song. And then when it came time to transition, he could hit play on his other song, and then he could mix it as if he was a DJ mixing between two prepared tracks. So it was a good way to do it, but it requires a full-size DJ mixer. And in that case, again, I go back to that same idea that if I'm going to do it that way, I would prefer to just DJ and have a CDJ and another CDJ and just DJ with a USB stick, instead of hauling all this expensive gear that's heavy and it's hard to fly with and all that stuff. If I'm going to use gear, I want to use it for what I love using it for, which is making the music, and instead of just like creating challenges that I have to then create ways to overcome live. So again, goes back to my personal preferences, but yeah, that's where I come from. So let's see here. Thanks. Not about modular specific. Would be good to join the course. Can't commit at the moment. Well, if you want, take advantage of the discount now. Sign up for the course now, and I'm happy to move you to a later course if you can't make it to one of these. Right now, June and July are both on sale. And so if you sign up for either of those using the 40% discount that's right now, I'm happy to move you to August or September or whatever later on if it doesn't end up working out. But I will say, one of the great things about the course is it's a 1 month long commitment, 4 weeks. And what I've found from a lot of people that have taken the course, and there's a bunch in the chat, so I'm sure that they will stick up for what I'm saying here. A lot of people like that 1 month commitment to accountability and saying, I will stick to this for a month, and you'll see a dynamic jump in what you're able to do with gear you already have just by committing to doing it all the time for a month. And if you can't make it to the online, like the group, the live group Zoom sessions that we do twice a week, they're all recorded so you can watch them after the fact. So it's set up so you don't have to be there necessarily, but there's an accountability aspect to it when you have to be there that I think a lot of people end up liking in the long run. So give it a try. Synthad, hey Mark, what's going on? Listening while repatching for a new video. Awesome. I can't wait to see it. I don't know what it's on. You get so much gear that I don't know what it's going to be on, but good to see you. Good to see you in here. It was great to hang out with you at Superbooth. Let's see here. Behringer Flow 8 has sliders and 8 inputs. Effect sounds good, although hard to find. Yes, but again, it comes down again to a couple things: performance, size, portability. I think the one you're talking about, if I'm not wrong, is fairly large. It's like a small desktop studio mixer, which again, I don't need mic pre's. I don't need XLR inputs and stuff like that. So a lot of these mixers are designed for that. I'm not sure about the Flow. I haven't seen that one, but or I haven't. I just can't remember. Anyway, I'll take a look at it and see. Let's see. Another on mixers. I ended up with a Mo2 ultralight in my case instead of a mixer. You can mix on your phone, full parametric EQ and compressor for every channel. Yes, my issue with stuff like that, because you can use, there's a lot of great apps that you can use an iPad for this too. But for me, again, the mixer is one of the most important performance tools for me. So touchscreen just doesn't work for me. I need knobs and faders that I can feel what's going on, like in the dark. I can build up muscle memory about where things are. Like I don't have to look at my faders to know where I'm moving it while I'm doing something else. So if it's on a touchscreen, I do need that. So I need to be able to look at it and see. And again, not always being able to get the same type of finite control. I prefer for specific tasks like mixing, I prefer a tactile, hands-on performance mixer. So for me, the touchscreen thing doesn't really work, but for some people, if that's not important, you'll definitely get way more power out of using something like your phone or your iPad to be able to do stuff like that. So I would be all for it if that's what you're into. Let's see. I feel like I should either use full-fledged tracks or else totally improvise. Like, is there no middle ground? No, there's plenty of middle ground. I mean, I would say the vast majority of live performances are on that kind of shade of gray spectrum, somewhere between, all the way on one side you have DJing, where you're playing a fully produced track and you're just mixing it with other fully produced tracks. And then on the other spectrum, you have 100% fully improvised, even more than what I'm doing, where there's people that are really great keyboard players, which I'm not. So they're playing keys, they're playing multiple instruments, they may have drum pads that they're playing. So there's an even more improvised live version than what I'm doing. I'm kind of more on that end of the spectrum, but I'm not quite all the way. And I think everybody's in the middle somewhere. And I think that it all comes down to your personal preference. But I think that the less that's prepared in advance, the more freedom you have to make transitions and flow and a full live set tell a story in a smooth, coherent way. It's much easier to do that the less you have pre-prepared. The more you have pre-prepared, the less you have to worry about creative inspiration, knowing your gear well enough to do stuff quickly on the fly, having the right gear that can do things quickly on the fly, which is a lot of what we talk about in the course. So there's pluses and minuses about both. My preference just leans towards the pluses on this side of improvised, but there's a lot of people that lean the other way. And I think because I was all the way on the other extreme DJing for so long, that I just wanted to move as far away from that as I could. And that's kind of where I ended up where I am. So I enjoy it this way, but it's not for everybody. And just to be honest, it's not always for me. Like there's times where I'm about to perform and I get in my own head about, why am I so dumb that I don't prepare things in advance? Why do I create this unnatural stress for myself? But I end up enjoying that once I start playing. So it's just for whatever you find pleasure in. Again, this goes way back to the very beginning of this conversation, which was have fun. Whatever's fun, do that. If it's fun to write tracks and then play those out live for people, do that. There's nothing wrong with that. If it's fun to improvise and write music live in front of the crowd, do that. But if that stresses you out and it's not fun, don't do it, right? Like there is no right answer. Find the place on that spectrum from fully pre-prepared to fully making it up in the moment. Find your happy place in there. Like I mentioned before, I'll use the black box to have certain loops because there's certain things that are not fun to create live, like subs or certain percussion loops. It just takes a lot of time and a lot of different modules to do that stuff live. So I'll have some of those saved as loops, and I'll use those as tools in my live setup. But it's not pre-prepared tracks. It's using things that are less fun to do in the moment. But everything that is, drums, percussion, leads, bass lines, anything that's sound design, synthesis, all that, I really enjoy doing that in the moment. So those things I keep live instead of, kind of going to the other extreme, right? But do what's good for you. Like, this isn't, like, as I mentioned at the beginning, the name of this video, the how to play live, was more sarcastic than anything, because there is no how to play live. It's just, there's ways for me, there's ways for you, and they won't be the same. And ultimately, how to play live is have fun and make it fun and do it in a way that's fun for you. And if it's not fun, find another way, right? Because ultimately, that's what this is supposed to be, right? Art should be fun for us. So let's see where we at. Did you work out what a wing 32 is? What a wing 32 is? Thoughts on MIDI interface controlled mixer setup. So yes, they're like, I use sometimes the Launch Control XL to control different things, like inside the black box. It's a nice way to have a mixer in there that's a bit more performative. But again, if you're going to use a MIDI control surface as a mixer, it has to be controlling a mixer, right? It's not, a MIDI control is not a mixer in itself. So that means you still have to have something, whether it's a computer, whether it's a push, whether it's a black box, whatever, you have to have something that the faders on the MIDI controller are controlling. So for me, rather than having, something that it's controlling and then having a controller, I would rather just have a mixer in my case, or a mixer outside the case if somebody would just make one so I could use one. What else? Ultralight, not as performance mixer, but more of a set and forget, to be sure, so you don't blast the audience's ears out. Yeah, I mean, that's one way to do it. For me, mixing is more of a performance aspect. As far as new gear to get, Torso T1, you spoke about it before. Yeah, I mean, again, personal preference thing. I tried the T1, I tried the Oxy, and I tried the Hapax. For me, the Oxy was head and shoulders the winner in that three-way competition. I have good friends, I have students, I have people that are in this chat that have other ones, that have the T1 and that have the Hapax, and that absolutely love it, and they had tried the Oxy and they preferred those over the Oxy. It's a personal preference thing. For me, the combination of form and functionality and workflow and interface in the Oxy 1 won out over the Torso T1 and the Hapax. Now, that's again for me personally. So use whichever one you want to use. I wouldn't say, just like with any gear, there's not one thing that's better than the others. There's some that are better for you than others, and there are some that are better for me than others, but it doesn't mean it's better. So whatever your preference is. T1 is great for generative stuff, for creating creative, new, interesting things. There are a lot of things that you don't have control over, so you have to kind of generate happy accidents and go with it. The Oxy for me can do that, or you can maintain certain bits of control and then use the generative aspects to generate other stuff. So I liked that aspect of this. Hapax is very much the same. You can generate stuff, but you can maintain a lot of control over those things. So if what you're looking for is something to kind of, the machine generates the idea and then you follow along, the T1 is great. If you want more control in certain aspects, I would say Oxy or Hapax. So it all kind of depends on how you're going to use it. So let's see. I got latency clocking Octatrack as master, controlling other hardware through Ableton. So I switched to Ableton as master. How did you clock Dollar Slide before Oxy 1? So Octatrack is a challenge because it's a really old piece of gear. So there's weird latency with the Octatrack that you don't encounter with other stuff. And I think part of that is just because of the age of the hardware and software itself. So, but for me, before the Oxy One, I was not really, so I would put things through Ableton, but so most of that was in studio. It wasn't live hardware. I never used Ableton as part of my live rig. So in the studio, I have a rack mounted down below there, which you can't see, obviously, the MRCC MIDI hub. So it basically, I could put all my outputs and inputs into that, and then it has a matrix, so you can send those to different places. And then it has a USB that's controlled by Ableton. So I was clocking everything from Ableton through that, and then sending it out to my whole system. A simple way that I've seen that works really, really well is to, I have a bunch of friends that use the analog rhythm as kind of their central hub because they like the drum machine aspect of having that be the clock. And they'll clock via Overbridge. They'll clock the analog rhythm from Ableton, and then they'll send out physical MIDI cables to everything else in their setup from the rhythm. So if they're using Ableton, they can clock it, and if they're not, they still have central control from the rhythm. And I was actually doing that prior to the Oxy as well. So that was another way to do it. Let's see. I was contemplating getting 2 Digitakt. Saw a cool dude using that setup. Yeah, it's definitely a way to go if you want to do that. I'm using the PAMs the same way, clocking everyone, but it's very limited for real power. Do you use it to modulate too, like solo follows? I don't really have any modulation that I use in my case, so the answer is no. But one thing, if you notice, you can see that the clocks are all moving at differing amounts. I have those set up so that if I want something during a live set, I usually keep cables with me on stage and I can patch stuff. I can use the Griffin's Claws for that. And I can use the ZR for that as well. So I can patch things out if I choose to. I also have one quad LFO here that I can use to patch out. But I generally don't. And part of that goes back to the improvised nature of my shows, that I don't know what I'm going to play. And setting up modulation requires you to know more or less what you're going to play so that you can set up timing of LFOs or movement or where you want it patched to or how you want it to change sounds. So for me, in my shows, I'm the modulation, like with my hands, I'm adjusting things live. And if I come up with something that I like, I can quickly patch from the Griffin's Claws and just record that movement and have it do that just in that moment of that thing that I was doing improvised. So the modulation tends to be improvised just like everything else in the show. So I'm not using the PAMs for that. I have the ability to, but I generally don't. So let's see where we at here. Thanks for that advice. You're welcome. 1,000 Details artist was using 2 Digitakts recently. Yep. Synthad, do you still have the Proteus in your setup? And if so, how are you using it? So I have the Proteus in my studio case, which is over there. You can't see it, it's off screen. And that's where anything that's not part of my live rig lives over there so that I can cross patch with my live rig to test things out, or I can use things in there. The Proteus, so this kind of goes back to what I was just talking about the T1. I love the Proteus for generating random patterns and being able to iterate on those patterns, it's very, very cool for that. The Proteus is a new module that's just about to come out this week from Seaside Modular. It's amazing. I really love it. The thing that's difficult for me for playing live is that I don't have any control over individual steps. So it's either all happy accident and iterations on that happy accident or nothing. So I don't have any control that like, I like this sequence, but I want to change this one step, which that's one of the reasons why I love the Oxy One, because I can go in. So let's say we're in this sequence here. I can go into random generation. I can generate a random pattern. That's way too dense. I can generate a random pattern like this and say, okay, I like all of this, but I want to add a step here and I don't like this one. I want to change the pitch. So I can use the random generation for ideas, and then I can modify the idea. With the Proteus, it's great if you want to generate random ideas and go with it, but you don't have the control over individual things to go in and individually modify steps. So I found for my live setup, it wasn't doing something that the Oxy couldn't already do in a way that actually works better with my workflow. But in my studio setup, what's really cool is that I'm not doing things live on the fly there. So I love it for generating happy accidents with production stuff. So I can be creating stuff and be like, oh, I like this one. I'm going to record that. I'm going to sample that, or I'm going to record that lead that came out really well. So for me, it works really, really well as a studio tool, and it didn't work with my workflow as far as live performance tool goes. I did try it for a couple shows, and I just found that I was staying away from it because of that thing. In studio, I'm leaning on it a lot because I love that generative aspect of it and being able to create cool iterations on an idea. So yeah, again, it's not, this goes back to that idea that modules aren't just good or bad. Hardware is not just good or bad. They can be really good for certain cases, and they maybe don't lend themselves to others. So, there's certain things in my case that I don't prefer to use when I'm doing sound design in my studio modular, because I have less control over it, because maybe it's an all-in-one voice. So I don't have all that same kind of control. Whereas the stuff that's in my studio case, I have a lot of modulation control over, and a lot of more randomness and cool generative stuff that I don't necessarily want in my live case, because I want to keep a certain amount of control, because I can't afford things to go just totally off the rails when I'm playing live. So even though I use a lot of random generation, I like it to be random generation with guardrails and controls, where the Proteus was kind of in between that, because you can quantize to key, and so you can get some control, but you don't have that individual per step control that you get from the Oxy. So that's why I go with this for all my live sequencing now. So let's see what else. One of my favorite tips I've gotten from you is to practice playing in the dark. Yeah. I don't play out much, but it's helped me develop muscle memory instead of relying on looking at things. Yeah, it's one thing we talk about in the course a lot, is practice the way you're going to perform. So that means dim the lights and get used to looking at your gear in the dark. So for example, with the Oxy, there's marks that are painted on it that show you where every 4 steps is, to give you some guidelines. But when it's dark, you don't see those. So I'll show you, in my Mark 1 that I've been using to perform live with, I've got tape on here with things marked, because that way I can actually see it live. Where if I don't have this, it's much more difficult to see live. So it's one of those things where if you don't practice in the dark, you won't know that you can't see it. And then you get up there in front of a crowd and you can't see it. And so it's really stressful. And I also tell people in the course to practice breaking down and setting up your gear in the dark, because most of the time when you go to play a show, you're going to have to break down and set up in the dark. So get used to using the light on your phone, or patching things and knowing where they are without having to be able to read everything perfectly, because it will very rarely be as perfectly controlled as it is at home when you're going to play a show. So yes. Let's see, I've got a Torso T1 and love it. The Oxy looked great, but it's too fiddly for me. Torso is more immediate, perfect for jamming, but it's not as good for pre-programming tracks like the Oxy. Yeah, I mean, I think that the Oxy, if you mean by fiddly, it's got a lot, it can do exponentially more than what the Torso can do. So you can go very deep into things. It's very easy to use on the surface. If you want to randomly generate stuff like what I was just showing you, like what the Torso does, for example, if I want to generate a pattern, I can just press and I've got a pattern that's generated in key, just like the Torso. If I want to do another one, I can just press and I can keep generating patterns and they're all in key, right? So it's very easy to use to do very limited things. You can also go in and do Euclidean sequencing is also super, super easy in the Oxy 1, just like it is in the Torso. Most of the stuff in the Torso is based on things like Euclidean. So you can do everything that the Torso can do with this in just as simple a way. But then it can get fiddly if you choose to get fiddly. If you want to go deep into modifying things, especially the Mark II, some of the new functionality of the Mark II is just mind-blowing what you can do, like with the accumulator and with some of the step repeats and stuff. You can generate some really interesting things with a ton of control. And I know I saw an interview recently with Ura, and he was talking about the development of this Mark II Oxy One. He was saying that they wanted to make sure that they developed something that helped you be creative, but didn't just do all the things. Because that, this goes back to that whole AI conversation where, AI in music, if the important thing is the output and you don't care about the process, then AI is cool. Just like having totally non-controllable random generation is cool if what you care about is the end result. But if what you care about is the process, the making of it, the creativity and that whole creative process, being able to maintain creative control over key elements while you're still having a conversation with your machines, while they're still giving you things you wouldn't normally do, but then you have the power and the final say in what gets done. That for me is really important in a live performance and in the whole kind of creative process. The T1, very much like the Proteus, is great if what you want to do is have the machine make the thing for you, and then you go with it afterwards, right? You can't go back in and modify it. You just go with what it does. So again, it comes down to a workflow and a personal preference thing. T1 is fun for that stuff, and the Oxy can do that same stuff, as can the Hapex. But for me, devices like the Oxy and the Hapex give you a lot more control of the process rather than just parameters, and then you get an output that you go with, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's too deep or not. Anyway, let's see here. Squid could be a good controller for live. Yeah, it's okay. I have one. It's over there. I've been trying to sell it forever, so if you want to buy it, I've got one right there. It's cool. It's fine. It's kind of like it reminds me of the snake sequencer in Ableton, where you kind of set steps and then you can change the direction of the pattern, and it's cool, but it's nothing like a T1 or an Oxy One or a Hapex, like not even close, and it's way bigger as well. Let's see here. Thanks very much for the detailed answering. You're welcome. That's what these are for. Where are we at? Peter Brown, regarding nifty case to house your mixer, tried that with my after-later audio mixer and it lacks the power necessary. Be sure to double check. Good point. Forgot about that. Let's see, been using my Electribe with patterns and now the black box also with some, and play the S1 or Microfreak from the key step and use that to do vocoder stuff. Yeah, that sounds like a great live setup. All that stuff is cool. I love Electribes. I would love to get one. It's one of those things that I would like to have one just to have one because they seem really fun. They sound cool, fun to play, but I've never gotten one. Let's see. Good evening, dude. I hope you're well too. I don't know who that is, but good to see. I've been watching videos on the Mark II. Looks like a lovely bit of kit. Slightly out of my price range at the moment. Yeah, it's not cheap, but it's as a friend of mine who's a tattoo artist says, good tattoos aren't cheap. Cheap tattoos aren't good. So yes, it's expensive, but it does a whole lot of cool stuff. Let's see, Toyo, hi Circo, how are you using the Push 3 in this setup? It's mainly for samples. Yeah, as I was talking about earlier, that you must have jumped in late. As I was talking about earlier, it's basically as an example of ways that you can use, so it's not always the same gear. I'm using this as an example today of ways to play time stretch samples and do end of chain processing in one thing rather than using the Digitakt, the black box, and the analog heat plus effects that I normally use. But I'm going to go back to that after this. This was more of a demonstration of what you can do as a setup, but I'm going to go back to kind of my traditional way of doing it, I think, after this. But it's cool. And part of that, as I mentioned before, is because this does a lot, but it's not super fun to play. Because you're going through a lot of menus, same knobs using a lot of different functionality, where when I've got other pieces of gear, it's a lot more fun to play, a lot more interactive. And that, for me, that fun part is the most important bit. Let's see. Don't forget the MK1 is still amazing sequencer. Good point, Mark. It's funny. I talked about this on my last live stream. Whenever an MK2 of anything comes out, people tend to go, "Oh, now my MK1's not worth anything," or "Now I have to sell it. Now I have to do whatever." And the reality is, the MK1 is just as good as it was 2 weeks ago. And the MK2 is just something different that does those things plus a few more. So if you don't need the few more things yet, get an MK1 or use the MK1. It's still great. I'm going to keep mine, even though that I have the MK2 now. Same thing happened when the Digitakt 2 came out. Like the one is, the Digitakt MK2 is my favorite sampler. The MK1 is my second favorite. So it's like, it's like, you have to just figure out what you need and what it's good for in your setup. And it's not because there's a Mark II that the Mark I is now worth somehow less than what it was the day before. It's just a better deal now because so many people think it's worth less, so they discount the prices and sell them. But actually, it's just as good as it was the day before the Mark II came out, when it was full price, right? It's not like a Mark II comes out and the Mark I all of a sudden gets kneecapped where they take a bunch of its functionality away. It's like, no, it still does everything that it did a day before, right? So anyway, what else? Michael, IntelliGel Jelly Mix mixer was introduced at Superbooth. Desktop 5 input mixer with 2 stereo sends, pre and post selectable, tilt and low pass filter. Each channel, yes. I used it. I thought it was fine. It is not, by my perception, it is not a performance mixer. It is a mixer, but it's not a live performance mixer, at least for the type of music I do. So let's see, Joel, hi Eric, greetings from Sweden, hello. Found your channel thanks to the collaboration jamming live performance together with Oscar and Underdog a few weeks ago. Great channel for me. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it was great. I had an amazing time with Oscar in Belgium, hanging out with him, making music and playing a live show together and recording a bunch of stuff. And then he came to Berlin at Superbooth and we hung out there as well. We played a show there as well and went out and, did some studio time with a friend and it was cool. Loved spending time with Oscar. He's amazing. We had a great, great time together. Let's see. Hey, ever try any of the Sonicware boxes? Actually, I haven't. So I wouldn't be able to talk intelligently about Sonicware boxes. Let's see, Michael. Yes, in that I still have a ton of functionality to squeeze out of the Mark I. Yeah, I mean, I was using the Mark I in ways where I was only using about 20% of what it could do even before the Mark II came out. So I will still keep my Mark I. It's going to become my studio tool. It's going to be what controls Ableton and all of that. So while I use the Mark II for live performances. Let's see here. Been looking at what options gear is about. Want a live setup, but also need to do research. Yeah, there's too many options out there, too many choices. Bought the ambient one today. Cool. Does the Oxy One have macro control, controlling multiple parameters on different devices? For example, one knob changes cutoff in multiple devices, or do you prefer direct interaction with the individual hardware? So the thing is, the Oxy One, it really only has 4 knobs, so I don't ever map them to control anything else. I use those to control what's inside the controls here. For me, this is a sequencer. I like using the different lanes of the sequencer, the different functionalities of the sequencer, being able to use mod lanes, being able to program probabilities and steps and jumps and accumulations and beat repeats and steps and have things be under flow control and outputting LFOs and all that kind of fun stuff. But I'm not using this as a MIDI controller at all, other than the sequencing functionality. So I'm not assigning these knobs to anything. So I'm the wrong person to talk to about that. Now, the Noisite drop that I saw at Superbooth, my plan is to, when that comes out, to pair it with the Oxy One, because that is the exact opposite. That one is not a sequencer, it is a controller. So it will control functionality within the Oxy Choral, functionality within the black box, functionality within certain modules here, so that I can control a whole bunch of different destinations. That has setups where each knob can go to up to 8 destinations. So it can be an 8 destination macro per knob. And then you can save snapshots and presets and all sorts of things. So Noisite Drop is the smartest, coolest MIDI controller I've ever seen. And so I can't wait to get my hands on one and use one. But I'm not using the Oxy for that at all. This for me is not a MIDI controller, it's a sequencer. Whenever I want to use a MIDI controller, I tend to use the Launch Control XL just because it's kind of like the basic and does all the stuff that you would want a MIDI controller to do. So trying to make a live setup with my Roland S1 and KO2 and iPad with Koala Sampler. That is, yeah, cool. I love the S1. I think that sounds great. It sounds very much like the SH101. I had a KO2 for a little while and got really frustrated with it and sold it. But again, whatever works for each person is their own. Hey Chris, what's going on? Hope you're good as well. What's the difference for you between a mixer and a performance mixer? Mixer for me is it functionally mixes sounds together. So you can set levels, you can have effect sends, you can have different things. A performance mixer is something that is designed to be performative. So as an example, for me, if a mixer doesn't have faders, it is not a performance mixer because I need to be able to, for example, bring up 2 or 3 things at once, which you can't do if you're using rotary controls. You've only got 2 hands, unless you do the old DJ trick where you run rubber bands between them so you can take one knob and it controls 2 knobs. But in that case, you wouldn't. I also like faders in that I can look and see level sets here. I like for your mixer to have metering built into it so that I can see either pre-fader or post-fader levels for everything by channel. So if it doesn't have that, for me, it's not a performance mixer. I like to be able to have effect sends, obviously, is really important in performance, and being able to have the connectivity to have sends going in and out. There's other things that performance mixers I think will have as well. So like mutes per channel is another thing that is super useful to have when you're playing live, to be able to mute something, bring it in, and then unmute it so that it comes in full, or to be able to mute something while it's playing. Also really important. So those types of things that you would find more in a DJ mixer, honestly. DJ mixers are ultimately strictly made to be performance mixers. So that kind of stuff. Sometimes they have built-in effects. They often will have built-in returns so that you can have the effect sends return to its own channel. So like the Exalon here has 2 returns for the 2 effect sends. So I don't have to use a return channel, and both of those are stereo. So things like that are what, for me, makes it a performance mixer versus a mixer. For me, a mixer is something that, rotary controls, no metering. It functionally mixes audio signals into an audio output, and it may have sends, so you can send to different paths, but it's really not designed to be played consistently during a show. Often regular mixers that are not performance mixers can be very small. Like the Teenage Engineering TX6 is a great example of that. It's got faders and metering, but it's too small to functionally play, to use as a performance tool. It's like tweezers to deal with the little knobs. If that one would have been 3 times the size, it would have been a fantastic portable performance mixer, but they made it too small. So it's not functional to use for performance. And that's what for me makes a performance mixer, is something that is really designed to be played as part of your instrument rather than set and left for the most part, if that makes sense. All right, let's see here. Synthad, approximate as the mod knobs in the front can be sent to multiple destinations. MIDI internal destination CV2. Yeah, exactly. I don't use it that way, but yes. Cheers from France, Chris. Bonjour. Bonsoir. That's late for you. No, is it morning? It's late for you. Hold on. Please, could you explain how you link drums and voice together with effects? I don't know exactly what you mean. Link drums and voice together with effects. You're gonna have to be more specific about that. I am not sure at all what you're asking there. Howdy, Andrew. James, definitely had fun with this Sonicware stuff. I've tried great sounds, but I was always sequencing externally. Noisite drop, can't wait. Yeah, me too. Is there another thing that's another thing that tipped me towards the T1? It has 14 knobs that you can assign to anything, then apply randomization to it. Yeah, I mean, it's got, again, it's a workflow thing. I don't need a MIDI controller, so I didn't need a bunch of knobs. I need a deep, super controllable sequencer, which I found in the Oxy, and also in the Hapax. And the Oxy won out over the Hapax because it's battery powered and it's much smaller, and it has most of the same functionality in a much smaller package that's battery powered. So that for me was important for travel. But Hapax and Oxy were both very cool. Let's see, can't wait to see drop in my setup. I can't wait to see it in my setup too. Problem with DJ mixers is that they use RCA inputs. I mean, that's not that big of a problem. You just get cables. I have in my setup, I have right here, I will show you, because often when I go to play, I will need to connect to a DJ mixer even if I'm not using one. So you get these cables that are 1/4 inch on one side, RCA on the other side. You just go out from your setup and into the RCA and you are good. So you can have those. I've also got adapters, which are, let's see. Everything is still a mess from traveling. Other adapter. Let's see here. I mean, basically, this is an adapter that's RCA to 1/4, and then I've got other ones that are 1/4 to RCA. So you can always go back and forth between formats. It's not that important. For me, the big drawback with DJ mixers is that they're gigantic. So you can't travel with your own. So you have to count on there's going to be one there, and you have to be able to set it up so that you can use it, which if there's one there, generally it's for everyone to use. Or, you know, the DJ playing before, so then you're changing connections, changing sends, and it becomes a nightmare. So you would want to bring your own or have a separate one for you. And it's really difficult to travel with DJ mixer because they're gigantic and super, super heavy. So that for me is the biggest DJ mixer drawback. Let's see here. Because you can put the Exalon in its own small box. Yeah, I think that's what they were talking about with the like nifty case. Just got the DJM V10, love it. Yeah, I mean, for me the V10 that's the best performance mixer out there. It is my preferred one. Like if I was going to play using a full-sized performance mixer, full-size DJ style performance mixer, the Pioneer V10 is the one I would choose 10 times out of 10. It is, for me, the best one that's on the market. But it weighs like 40 pounds, I think, like almost 20 kilos. So you couldn't travel with it. So if you were going to play shows, you couldn't take it with you. You'd have to count on one being there. A lot of venues won't have one, particularly ones that are doing live performance. They certainly won't have a separate one that you can connect to and use as your personal one for the show. So yeah, because of that, it's really hard for me to get used to using that and then not be able to use it when I play out live. Going back to that idea of practicing in the dark, you always want to practice on the gear that you're going to play on. So if you're going to use a DJ mixer, you have to make sure that you can either take it with you or there's going to be one there if you're going to practice with a DJ mixer. So that's why, again, I go back to, this is why I put a performance mixer in my case. So that way I know that I always have the mixer I'm used to playing with me when I go to play a show. But yeah, it's not always possible. And the Octatrack and EasyBot's performance template, you are 100% correct. I used that previously. You know, I was using that for quite a while, actually. Where are we at here? Using the Tesseract Tex Mix, pretty small, yeah, and 20 HP. Yeah, and that's the thing is, again, a lot of those mixers that are you know, once you get away from the Exalon and the WMD performance mixer, for me, a lot of the mixers that are made for modular are much less performance mixers than they are functional mixers. Because again, once you scale down, kind of like with the TX6, once you scale down to like a 20 HP size, you've got, then the faders are tiny, they're right next to each other. So you're not gonna play that. Like when you're playing live, you're not gonna be getting in there, like moving things around. This, for me and the WMD are both a really good compromise between the space they take up and the functionality and playability of being able to have space to kind of get your fingers in and actually have some control over the knobs and faders instead of having to kind of micro control, kind of like I did on the TX6. So those mixer modules, that is the Exalon. You can't see the spelling. Yeah, Exalon is, it's written up here, Exalon. So this right here is the Exalon. This is an expander, 3-channel expander module that is called the XP3. And this is a new 3-channel expander module that I believe is coming out tomorrow. Can't remember, tomorrow or the next day. It's the XI3, which is a 3-channel input. This one, again, more functional mixer. It's got volume and 2 effect sends, but it doesn't have faders. So I use this a lot when I'm bringing in external gear. So if I have the black box or something like that, and I want it to go through my mixing set, I can bring that into these and have it just go in, and I'll control things on that device. And then just have a main signal come into here. This also works great, like when I played with Oscar in Belgium. So anytime you're playing with somebody else, you can take a main from their output coming into one of these channels, and then you have that going through your whole mixing and through your final performance effects. So you can still maintain control over like DJ style performance effects, but including somebody else's rig as they come in, which is what we did when we were playing live, and it worked out super slick. So what else? V10 is like a pizza box. The V10 is like a pizza box full of lead. That thing is so heavy, but it is the best. Like I don't, you know, I'll argue with anybody, but it's the best performance mix out there. It's just way too big. Just tuned in, so apologies if this has been asked. How do you route the Ghost? Is it a send return on multiple channels? So yes, the Ghost is on FX2 send from my mixer. So for example, let's do just like a really quick hat thing. So if I have the this hat playing, then I want to send it through the Ghost. I have kind of the Ghost set up in a preset way that I like as kind of an effects chain with delay and reverb and filter. So if I send to it, we'll get this. Then I can move the filter. And change the delay timing. Right. So that's how I'm using it. I have it set up on a send. So it's sending from FX1 from any channel that I choose to send to it, and then it's coming back into return one. So I've just got a volume for it here. And again, having a return like that, I don't necessarily need fader and additional sends and gain and pan and all that stuff on that. So I can just have it coming back to an effects return, which again is another thing that's, for me, a good sign of a performance mixer is if you've got the ability to do sends and returns and it keeps them separate from your actual channels. So you can bring it into a channel if you choose, but if you don't want to, you've also got a return, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool. Let's see, sweet. The FX1 and FX2 is pre-fader. I got the model 1.4. Selling it because one of the sends was post-fader. So in the Exalon, these are post-fader by default, but you can set FX1 to be pre-fader if you choose, but FX2 is always post-fader. So yeah, you don't have the ability to switch them both to pre-fader. But so I have the Exalon frequency shifter set up on 1 so that I can send things without bringing it up, so that I can use that frequency shifted effect in sequences to make like a new voice from the bits that I send to it pre-fader. But with the Ghost, I have it set up on the post fader, just because it's the only way that I generally use that, is I send things out post fader to it. So yes, but very much the same. Let's see. Controlling the volume from the sources, having a few filters on voices to cut the sound of it before the mixer. Yeah, so I mean, I have filters on pretty much every voice, but I don't use those as any kind of volume control, because I prefer that to be sound shaping rather than that. Let's see, are you using sidechain feature on the Ghost? Do you have other alternative for that in the setup? So, good question. So the Ghost does have a sidechain input, which I don't generally use. I mean, I have sometimes, but I just found that I wasn't using it very much. So I pulled it out so that way it can just be more free flowing. But it is a way to get ducking in that effects chain, which is pretty cool. The other way that I use sidechain here is the battering ram can put out an inverted envelope, and I have that going into an attenuator and then into a multiple. So then if I want to sidechain something, I can just patch to that. So like if I patch into one of these outputs, I can go to the volume in any one of the channels, and I can go to multiples. That's why I have it coming through a multiple. And then I can sidechain that thing just by turning up the attenuation. So right now it's completely off, but then if I turn that up, it would send out a stronger inverted envelope ducking the volume VCA in that on that channel. So I have it set up so that I can sidechain. I don't use it very often, but more what I use it for is kind of like sidechain pumping if I want that effect in a certain part of the show, but I don't like to overuse it, because then I think it starts to sound like every other track that's out there, so I don't want it to. But I can if I choose to. And a lot of that comes from the fact that the battering ram can put out an inverted envelope, allows me to basically push sidechain out to things rather than having to use a compressor and having the kick trigger the compressor in order to duck level. This just sends out an inverted envelope so that that inverted envelope ducks the level of whatever I plug it into. So, what else? Thank you for sharing so much knowledge. You're welcome, Michael. I appreciate it too. And again, just a little plug as well. I'm still signing up for the June session and the July session, but the July session is getting pretty full. Quite a few spaces left in the June session. So if you'd like to join either of the courses, the one on improvised live performance, which is called the hardware performance system. Sorry, I just blanked out. And then there's also a hybrid production system course. Those start June 2nd. They go for 4 weeks. You get 50 videos that you can watch at your own pace, and you can watch those after the 4 weeks. It's not just limited access there. It's about 8 different sets of topics, and then twice a week for those 4 weeks, so 8 different calls. We do a live Zoom call over the individual section that we're working on. So you can ask questions, I can go deeper, I can do demonstrations on whatever's going on in that particular section, and you could ask questions on your own individual setups there as well. You also get a 1 hour one-on-one with me via Zoom, so we can go over whatever you want. We can listen to your music, we can talk about patching, we can talk about setups, I can show you how to use the Oxy, like whatever you want to do. And then you also get access to an online group, which is exclusive to people that have taken the course, and that's ongoing as well after the course is done. So you get a nice social group online of people that have all kind of invested in improving themselves. I'm big on investing in improving your own level of knowledge and learning things, and in getting better ways to practice, rather than investing in more and more and more gear, thinking that the gear is going to be the magical solution that's going to buy your way out of practice. So I definitely push everybody to that. And then you also can send in a recording each week, which I'll give you feedback via email. of recording of you performing live, so that we can get feedback on your performance, your transitions, your kind of the way it looks, like the way it sounds, your mixing, your levels, your sound selection, sonic palette, all kinds of stuff. It's not gear specific and it's not genre specific either. So we have people across all genres of electronic music and using all different sorts of gear setups. This is more how to use your gear to do this rather than how to use specific pieces of gear, if that makes sense. Because the principles of the course apply no matter what gear you're using and no matter what type of music you're making. So yeah, so if you're interested, definitely check it out. Let's see. Have a link. Is that a question about the course? So the link is in the description of this video, or you can just go to circolive.com/courses. And there's still a discount from Superbooth. So if you use the code Superbooth at checkout, you will save 40% off right now, which is like the biggest discount that I've done. Well, it was 50, now it's 40 because there was it was for a limited number of signups, and that'll go down to 30 once 5 people have signed up for each of the courses at the 40% discount, and then it drops to 20, and then it drops down. So the sooner you sign up, the more you save. It's a pretty great savings right now. And as I mentioned before, you can sign up for whichever course you want. And if you do need to push that to a later month, I'm happy to switch you to a later month. So sign up now, take advantage of the discount, and then we can set you in whatever month you're interested in doing. So we'll definitely do that. Let's see, what else? Any other questions? This has been a great conversation, by the way. Thank you all so much for all the questions and the comments. The whole point of doing these live streams is that I like to share stuff on YouTube about this whole process, because I think the more people doing this, the better. That's why I teach the courses as well, because I just want to help everybody have as much fun as I have doing this kind of stuff. And so that's why I try to share as much as I can. And I stopped doing regular YouTube videos and started doing these live streams, because with the YouTube videos, I had to kind of second guess what people wanted and hope that people wanted the thing that I talked about. And with these, I do these on purpose because I want there to be this interaction. You tell me what you want to know, I can answer it. If I can't answer it, I'll tell you I have no idea. But I like the back and forth of this so that you can tell me what you would like, what information that you would like. And if I have that information, I'm happy to share it. So any questions that you have before we call it a day today, definitely pop those into the chat, and I'm happy to answer whatever about live setups, about performance, production, gear, traveling. Another thing that's a section of the course, we talk about getting gigs and marketing yourself and how to play gigs and what to bring and things that can go wrong and how you can fix those things and how you can prepare for them, and how to travel with gear, how to fly with your gear, and set it up and connect it and all that kind of stuff. So we talk a lot about the behind the scenes, the kind of nuts and bolts of playing shows. But it's also important to note too that the course isn't just for people who want to actually go and tour and travel and play shows. It's really to get you happy and more comfortable and feeling more free playing your hardware as instruments. I think that a lot of people buy this gear and then they sit there and stare at it and they plunk along doing a few things. They'll spend weeks and weeks making a pattern, and then they just replay that pattern, and they don't ever really spend any time learning how to play this hardware as instruments. And I think that, if you have a piano or if you have a guitar, you're going to take lessons to learn how to play it as an instrument. You wouldn't expect to just learn a thing and then just let it play the thing. But as soon as it's a synth or a sequencer or whatever, we get into this mindset of I have to make a track, or I have to do, it has to be you have to use it as a compositional tool, which it doesn't always have to be. These things are very playable, including sequencers, including samplers, including modular. It's very playable. And so the whole idea of the course is to learn how to be more comfortable improvising and actually playing your gear as the instrument it is, and setting it up as an instrument to be played and selecting sounds and laying it out in certain ways and figuring out how you have what's connecting what's controlling what, in order to make it play as an instrument rather than be a thing that you program and then you press play and watch it do the thing, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the whole idea, is to push towards that, playing this gear as instruments rather than just feeling like you have to write tracks on it and then let it play the track, if that makes sense. So anyway, let's see, a few more questions here. 50 people watching, but only 23 likes. Yeah, come on, man. What's going on? Hi again. On Oxy, what are the options on the performance page when you are in matricial mode? Good question. I don't ever use matricial mode. Synth you still on here? You can answer that. I think they're the same, if I'm not wrong. So when you go into the performance page, if it's a multi-track sequencer, this side is all mutes. So you've got like individual channel mutes over here, and then you've got mutes of the tracks within a multi. So like these bottom two and this top one are set up as multis, so they go there. And then you have the performance functionality over on the side, which for the multi-tracks, these are kind of fill functions where they'll repeat based on whenever you press that down. And then these are loops. So you can set different lengths of loops and have that pattern loop in that way if you'd like. And in the non-multi-tracks, the native way to use this is as a transpose function. So it's one semitone per little block here. So you can transpose individual things. So let's see, like if we're gonna, do I have something on here? Yeah. So I'll just do the pizza here. So that's on sequencer 2. So if we go into performance mode, sequencer 2 is here. So if I want to transpose this, let's say up 5 semitones or down 3, and then you can come back to center here. So it gives you a way from one page to do mutes and transpose and fills and loops all in one kind of performance page. And then I can't remember shift and this, what it was. Synthad, you're gonna have to get on here because he knows more about it than I do. He's had it longer. But anyway, that's what these are for. And I believe the matricial does the same thing. I believe it's transpose as well. Let's see, where are we at? So I tried signing up for the course, but the Discord code box seems to be a little messed up. Let me see. I can fix that. Let's see here. I'm just going to take a look at the page and see what it looks like. Courses. Let's go here. Enroll now. Ah, I see what the problem is. Yeah, let me fix that really quick here. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I'll go in and fix that. I just have to take the writing off of it so you can get to the box. For some reason, the website went a little goofy, which I can fix for sure. And then you should be able to do the discount. This is going super slow. Sorry about that. Anyway, I'll fix this and we can, here we go, payment page. let's see, that should help. Go in and take a look and see if it looks normal now. Yeah, it should look normal now. So go ahead and get signed up, enter in Superbooth, you get 40% off, and it will, it will take that off the cost of the course right now. So yeah, jump in if you are into either of the courses. And so performance course, production course, and June, July are both sign-ups. And like I said, take advantage of the discount now, and then I can move you to whatever month you want to. So if you want to go later on, you can, but take advantage of the discount now so we can get you in and all signed up. There you go. It's fixed. It says whenever you fix it, let me know. It's fixed. Alrighty, so you can go ahead and sign up now. Yeah, go ahead and check it out. And yeah, look forward to having you in the course. It's a ton of fun. You'll learn a lot. I think there's a lot of people in the chat here who have taken one or both of the courses, and I'm sure they will let you know what it's like. If you have any questions about the course, you can pop those in there. I'm happy to answer, and I'm sure everybody in the chat is. And just so you know, this is my way. You know, I don't do sponsored videos. I don't do paid sponsorships. I don't do any of that stuff on my channel because I like to be able to talk about what I like to talk about, and I like to be able to show off the gear that I like rather than the people who have paid me to show off gear. And so the only way that I can pay for all this and, you know, support still having this channel and taking my time to do this is through the courses that I sell. So if you want to support, there's a Patreon as well. There's also some affiliate links down below that if you want to buy any of the gear that we talk about, that's a great way as well. And it doesn't cost you anything. But if you do want to pay for something, you can sign up for the Patreon. One of the best things about the Patreon, if you sign up at the $40 a month level, we do every Saturday, we do a 1-hour Zoom call where we just chat about stuff. So if you have questions, if you want to talk about gear, if you want to shoot the shit about whatever, we do that every Saturday with all the people that are at that level of Patreon. So you can sign up for that. And then if you do the next level up, you get a one-on-one every month as well. So that's a good one. And then other than that, the courses, the two full courses that we talked about. And then there's also video only versions. So if you don't want the one-on-ones and you don't want the weekly group coaching, you can just do the video course. And that one you can start anytime you like. You can sign up. It's discounted as well right now. And then you just watch the videos at your own pace and learn at your own pace. But you don't get any of the one-on-one and you don't get access to the online group. So there's pluses and minuses about both, but I would say definitely the full course is by far the best deal because you get 8-9 hours of live online Zoom coaching between the one-on-one and the group ones, plus 50 videos, plus 4 feedbacks on your live performances, plus the online group. So lots of stuff that you get for only slightly more. So definitely give it a try. Courses are really helpful and fun indeed, especially the group calls. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, there's actually quite a few people in the chat here who've taken the course, which is cool. And it was also really cool to see at Superbooth how many of the students from all over the world kind of came together and met each other via the group chat online and then ended up spending time together, going out to the clubs together at night, having lunch together, walking around Superbooth together, hanging out in Berlin together. And it was cool because for me, again, this is all about the fun and the people and the interactions with crowds and like-minded people doing hardware stuff. So seeing those people that had only met virtually online via the Zoom calls actually get to meet each other in person and connect and make friends. And now they have people that they can hang out with and converse with all over the world. Sometimes people in the group are using that to set up doing live shows together, getting together to put on an event. If they're near each other locally, they're getting together to play music together or joining up with different groups of different synth groups in their towns. So it's been a really cool kind of organic growth of people hanging out together, which I didn't necessarily expect at the beginning. I thought it would be a cool online way for people to have a basically a Facebook group that people don't shitpost on, was kind of the idea originally. But now it's turned into this way to really connect people in real life. I know there's people that are planning on going to ADE and getting together there. When I played in Brussels, I had one of my students drive from the Netherlands to come see the show. I had people come to my shows in Berlin. One of the shows in Berlin, the promoter that booked me was actually a person who had taken one of my courses. So it's just like, it's become this really cool network of people doing this stuff and sharing this passion for making and playing live music. And so it's cool. I would love to see more people join in. So if you're into something like that, join in with the course. It's a way better investment than buying another module or another piece of gear that's just going to frustrate you or sit there, and it's never going to make you a better musician. And this course will not only help you with your music skills, but it'll also give you a connection to a whole bunch of other people. So it's a really, really interesting thing. I appreciate it. So let's see. Thank you so much for sharing. You're very welcome. I enjoy this. That's why I do it. Fantastic course. Seriously, it's what I've been looking for. Sign up today or tomorrow. Awesome. I'd love to have you in. Don't wait too long to sign up, because once it gets to 5 people that have signed up, it switches down to 30% off. So save that extra 10%. Sign up as soon as you can. But yeah, I started this whole thing. I started this YouTube channel as well as the course because I love doing this, and I love teaching, and I love sharing information about this stuff. So I wanted to share as much as I could and get as many people having the same amount of fun that I have doing this stuff. So the more people that can do the course and watch these streams and watch these videos, the more people are gonna, get to experience the same kind of fun that I do when I play this stuff. And hopefully I can teach you something or give you some inspiration to do something new and interesting and fun. And yeah, so I appreciate it. Thank you guys very much for hanging out for the live stream. I appreciate all the questions and the great conversation. And if you want to support the channel, click the affiliate links down below if you're going to buy something. If you would like to join the Patreon, there's a link to that down below as well. And that's a great way to keep in touch and also join in on the Discord and all that kind of stuff. And then of course the courses, that's kind of like the primary way that I support the channel and support all the stuff that I do musically. So if you want to sign up for one of the courses, I appreciate it. Now's the time to do it. Huge discount because of Superbooth and the aftermath of Superbooth. So now's the time definitely to sign up. And yeah, no better time than the present to get your learning on. And don't just stare at your gear and let it frustrate you, but learn some systems to help you feel comfortable doing the creative stuff on it, so that you don't have to focus so much on the nuts and bolts, that you can actually have some fun playing it and making music. So thank you very much. Appreciate you all for being here. And if you have any other questions, just put them in the comments of the video. I try to answer back all of those as best I can. And hope to see you in the courses. Thank you guys very much. And I will see you soon. Later.